welcome to March's meeting of the Planning and Applications Committee. We'll start with the agenda. I've counted all 10 members of the committee here, so I'm assuming there are no apologies for absence. No. 2, declarations of pecuniary interest. Do we have any? Not hearing anything. Okay. 3, the minutes of the previous meeting. Unless I hear anything, that's agreed. Again, agreed. Thank you. 4, planning applications. There are number 7. Yeah, 7 on the agenda this evening. We're going to take them not exactly in the order as on the agenda, because we'll do the ones that have objectors and applicants speaking first and move to the others later. So the order is going to be number 5, then 9, then 11, then 12, then 6, then 7, and then number 10. Number 8 has been withdrawn, so we're not dealing with that one tonight. Okay, so we move straight on to application agenda item number 5, 12 Cecil Road, and the planning officer to present that is Tim Bryson.
Thank you, Chair. Just going to share my screen. Hopefully you can all see my screen. Members, the application is at 12 Cecil Road as a householder planning application for extensions to the property. The site is adjoined by neighbouring residential properties as well, and flats at the rear. It's the existing ground floor layout, quite a short garden at the back, existing ground floor kitchen here, which would be removed to make way for rear extensions. So it's a mid-terrace property, 2-storey with a shallow roof, and at the back it's got this lean-to first floor structure and flat roof ground floor structure there for the kitchen. Turning to the proposed plans. So the kitchen flat roof extension will be removed and replaced with a new one, and the other side is proposed to infill of the ground floor extension as well, of the same height and design, mimicking each other. The difference is that this one at the bottom of the drawing would be stepped in from the boundary where it breaches a line with a neighbour where some glazed windows start. At first floor level, a bathroom, and then a new pitch roof over at top floor level would create a very small bedroom there. Turning to elevations, so proposed single-storey rear extensions here and here, and then a new pitch roof over the top floor here at the back. Looking at some section drawings, some side elevations. So this is just showing the abutting of the extension adjacent to number 14. In the background here are the windows at number 10, which you'll see in my site pictures. And again here, just showing the extension going beyond the boundary line. Face number 10. This is a rather useful 3D aerial view from Google, which shows a snapshot of the properties here. As you can see down the road, some people have done the 2-storey extension above, and the infill extensions will be here and here. Site pictures. This is the rear of the property. As I said, this section will be removed and replaced with extension, and extension up here. This is number 10 to the south. Quite an unusual situation. They have extensions up to the boundary with 3 clear glass windows here with light coming from this neighbouring property side. The proposal on this side would extend up to this brick course line here, then it would step in and come out. So you can see that on the plans. That's just showing the relationship there with the site. Turning to the other side, the proposal would stay on the boundary and come out here, adjacent to that neighbouring property there, and really just showing some boundary line, building lines. You can see the top floor extensions beyond, and there. So, Chair, overall, officers satisfied the application is visually acceptable and also would not harm neighbouring amenity, and therefore recommend permission be granted. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. We'll go to our speakers first. And the first objector I have on my list is Nicola Richards. I haven't explained the objector's speeches. You get 3 minutes each. So when there are 2 objectors, as with this one, you have 6 minutes in total. And then the applicant will then have 6 minutes to reply. In other cases where there's just one objector has 3 minutes, the applicant will have 3 minutes. But Nicola Richards, if you're ready, you have 3 minutes. Do we know if Nicola's in the meeting?
I think she's on mute. Nicola, I think you're on mute.
Okay, you got me?
Right. Yes.
Okay, sorry, I'm reading from the screen here. So, can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Can I start again, please?
Yes, please.
Okay. From the onset, both Ms. Cavendish and myself want the panel to know that neither of us have objections to the proposal, providing the ground floor extension remains on the same line and footprint as all the other properties from 12 to 22. There is a 30-foot boundary brick wall at the rear of number 10 and 12, which offers a great deal of privacy, but also restricts a huge amount of light. This is covered in ivy and provides a haven for wildlife. Unfortunately, this adds a further 2 to 3 foot of volume to the wall, constricting the available light throughout the day. This is not illustrated on the drawings. The proposal for number 12 exceeds the line of the original kitchen and encroaches onto my north-facing glass extension and number 14's conservatory by nearly 3 foot. The reason why these properties have extension in glass is for one very good reason: to let in light. The proposal illustrates a parapet construction which is not in keeping with the vernacular of the building and style of the same property types. The design makes the rear elevation much higher and the other properties, and therefore impacts greatly. The proposal shows the study area extending out from the property after a small recess from the rear wall of number 10. This tiny well area will not benefit from much light and is a great concern for damp accumulation, a historical problem. Since submitting our objections, we have always invited the case officer and her colleagues to visit our properties to see the impact this will have on our internal spaces. The invitation has been refused due to COVID restrictions, but they have managed to visit number 12 and feel that this was sufficient to make their recommendation. 6 years ago, I undertook the side infill extension. The design was sympathetic to the space and hugely considerate of number 12. The height of the boundary wall was most important, and Colin Stevens, a local architect, states that the extension on the boundary would have been restricted in height to 2.3 metres because of the sense of enclosure on the garden at number 12.
1 minute remaining.
So I asked the panel, why is it okay for number 12 to build over 3 metres high and restrict the amount of natural daylight received in the kitchen of number 10? And how can Mr. Bryson take the judgment that this would not be harmful when he has not stood in my kitchen or indeed lived in my property for 25 years? By passing the plans as they currently show, and by agreeing to extend further than any house of its kind, together with refusing to visit number 10 and 14, the panel is evidently giving preferential treatment to this application. I was under impression Merton Council was supportive of equality and fairness, but it appears that they are championing a design which is divisive, antagonistic, and elitist, promoting and enhancing one property over others. I don't consider it a neighbourly act, nor do I and others think it's an application that should be supported by Merton Council. Finished.
Thank you very much for that. The second objector we have is Kilaran, if I pronounce that right, Cavendish. You also have 3 minutes.
Chair,
Yes.
She's with Nicole, so she's going to share the same screen, so she'll be on now.
Right, thank you.
Okay.
Muted again, I think.
Nicola,
Yes.
you're muted.
Okay, can you hear us?
Yes, we can now.
Okay. I'm speaking to object to planning application 20-P3477. I live at number 14 Cecil Road, next door to number 12. I have lived in this property for 23 years. I'm not against any renovation work that will need to be carried out. I'm opposing both extensions proposed in a planning application, a new story rear extension and an additional single story infill extension. These two extensions are exceeding the length of all nearby properties. The elevation and the length of both extensions will have adverse effects on my property. The scale and height of these extensions are not in keeping to the line of other properties close to the homes of number 14 and number 10. This planning application indicated that it would add light and space of the home of number 12. These plans will be detrimental to both homes of number 14 and number 10. The overdevelopment will block a great deal of light from my conservatory. I built my conservatory as an infill extension to bring more light into my home and enjoy the view of my garden. The extension number 12 will be of no benefit to my home and will encroach on the daylight and space of my conservatory. This will also have an adverse effect on the infill extension on number 10. After several requests, Charlotte Gilhooly and her colleagues have refused to visit our properties but have paid number 12 a visit. I do not understand how they could have used the COVID as an excuse. Therefore, this decision is both hasty and unfair and has not given number 14 and number 10 equal treatment. I thought this council believed in equality.
1 minute remaining.
Other written representations against this planning application have been ignored. I would like to appeal against Charlotte Gilhooly's decision to grant permissions subject to conditions to this planning application. These two ground floor extensions will have a huge and negative impact on my home and on the home of number 10. I feel Nicola Richards and myself are being discriminated against because we're two single occupancy households. I request this planning committee to consider our written objections in further detail to reach an equal and fair decision. I feel a visit to our properties is necessary with COVID precautions being carried out. I have sent photographs to back my objection to this planning application.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Do we have a spokesperson for the applicant, Rebecca Carter? And if you're here, you have 6 minutes.
Chair,
Yes.
Rebecca's having connection issues, so Amy, I sent you the email of her speech, so Amy
Yeah.
will read it out.
We're ready to read
Okay.
that now.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you for allowing me time to speak. I want to start by acknowledging that there are concerns about my renovation plans. However, I do want to share my view on some of the objections raised. Light and privacy. I can understand most of my two neighbours' concerns most here. The ground floor extension does exceed current boundary by 85 centimetres and does have a parapet which increases the height of the ground floor by a small amount, a few centimetres. However, I discussed the design with architects a lot and was reassured that the impact should be minimal on light. For privacy, given there are no windows on the side of the 85 centimetres beyond my current boundary, I don't invade privacy. I recognise there is a risk of privacy being impacted given number 10's ground floor extension has windows overlooking my garden, but I have tried not to impact the situation by having skylights, not sidewall windows. Damp. Currently, I am not aware of any damp issues in my house, other than the external walls of my kitchen which don't impact my neighbours' properties. When I bought the house 6.5 years ago, the house was very damp, which I know was awful for my neighbours, so I had it all knocked back to the original brick, dried out and replastered. There would be a single-storey gap between numbers 10 and 12, but this is 85 centimetres by 50 centimetres, so a small area and one that can be managed. One of my main objectives in the renovation would be to build with high-quality materials to protect against any damp issues for my neighbours. To that end, I'd be very happy to sign an indemnity that in the event of any damp arising, I am fully accountable to fully correct it. Overdevelopment. There is a parapet proposed for the ground floor, which exceeds boundary by 85 centimetres, but this is modest in size. Other houses of exact design, as mine, already had top floor bedrooms approved and built. The total size increase of the proposal, in absolute terms and relative to the size of the house, is about 25% and far less than many other houses in Cecil Road, who have had top floor bathroom bedroom extensions built, plus extensions onto the back of their houses. Overall, I'm happy not to do the first floor extension and just do the ground floor extension in light of this, and happy to discuss this proposal in any follow-up meeting directly. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Next is straight on. I think it's you again, Amy, to read out the statement from Councillor Benbow.
Yes, you're correct, Chair. Thank you, Chair. In simple terms, this is about a proposed extension at property 12 exceeding the boundary line compared to other extensions at 16, 18 and 20 Cecil Road properties. Nobody is opposing the extension, providing it stays in line with the other properties in the row. Note all the properties 16, 18 and 20 have carried out their extensions and do not impact their neighbours. I fear this will cause division and unhappiness among the neighbours, regardless of permitted development rights, and there must be other factors that need to be considered. It is incredibly unfair and unjust. Property 12's proposal certainly does not consider the sense of enclosure on properties 10 and 14, which is cavalierly conveying the actual opposite. To envisage the likelihood impacts, particularly the proposed extension blocking property 10's north-facing glass extension, as shown in the submitted elevation drawings, it faces the risk of being plunged in darkness from the plans, too closed in. An architect who drew up the planning drawings for property 10 side extension and was asked about what governed the height of property 10's extension, his response was, "Your extension on the boundary, which included the utility room, would have been restricted in height to 2.3 metres because of the sense of enclosure on the garden at number 12. At property 14, there is a potential loss of sunlight coming into the garden with the proposed extension further than the existing conservatory's boundary. There is a very high wall behind the properties, but this is not clear on the plans and therefore the sense of enclosure will not be understood. The consequences are a lot to consider and both neighbours at properties 10 and 14 feel betrayed by the proposed overdevelopment extension at property 12. It will considerably affect their lives because they spend a lot of time in their gardens and conservatory. Also note that the history between properties 2 to 10, long and thin, and 12 to 22, short and wider, gives a better understanding. See the Google Earth snapshot. It is perfectly reasonable to say that the proposed rear extension exceeds other extensions, 16 to 20 on the left side. Scaling back into line with other properties would keep all parties happy. Please see the recent extension of property 16, which was done in a neighbourly and beautifully constructed way.
You have
as
1
to
minute
keep
remaining.
the line of properties to the rear the same as those that they are attached to. Why can't property 12 follow the example from property 16? The proposal for property 12 has not made any consideration for the neighbours. The neighbour at property 14 will be hugely affected by bringing a wall out further than their extension. The owner of property 10 made considerable effect at a colossal expense to reduce the impact of her extension. Unfortunately, this has not been done by number 12. Therefore, I recommend that panellists reject the current proposals at property 12 and propose to the applicant to scale back the proposed extension in line with other extensions at properties 16 to 20 for successful planning permission. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Now it's going to get a little tricky. My own internet issues mean I'm doing this meeting through my phone, so I can't see everybody. So I think Fazan is going to look out for hands up. But before we go to questions from councillors, Tim Bryson, is there anything you want to clarify from what you just heard from the objector and the applicant and the councillors then?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So remember, with this proposal, it does breach the existing building line with a number of the properties in Cecil Road, but only by 85 centimetres. The the extension to the southern side, which is adjacent to number 10 does have 3 ground floor side windows. And it's not quite an unusual situation with the ground floor windows being on the boundary facing into the garden. But the applicant has stepped the extension away from the nearest window and doesn't go beyond that window. The three windows there serve a kitchen diner there's another extension on the back of that out towards the rear garden. Turning to the other end, it is on a boundary, but again only 85 centimeters beyond the building line. So whilst there is some effect, it's not considered to be materially harmful. With regards to site visits, we have had the difficult situation of nearly a year now, where it has been advised against, but at officer discretion. Given the objections raised, which have been submitted photographs, officers have looked at the photographs and made a judgment, and also the case officer has done a site visit now to the applicant's site number 12 to look more closely at those issues raised. So I hope that helps, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right. Questions of clarification from members of the panel.
So you got Councillor Dean.
Councillor Dean. Okay,
and
you go
then
first.
you got Councillor Henry.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't see anyone else with their hands up at the moment. Councillor Crowe.
And Crowe. Okay. Councillor Dean, you first, David.
To understand this 85 centimetres, is this within the boundary of their garden still, or is this onto the public realm?
It's the 85 centimetres is into their garden. So if I can share the screen very quickly, Chair. Hopefully you can see that. So here, so it comes out here 85 centimeters and here 85 centimeters. And when I refer to setting it off the boundary to the south with number 10, that is here.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Henry.
Thank you, Chair.
Go ahead.
You're mute, Councillor Henry.
I thought I did. Sorry. Okay. Can the officer please explain about the boundary wall? I think Mrs. Richard mentioned the large boundary wall, brick wall. Is that wall going to remain, or is it going to be taken down, or what's going to happen to the wall? Is it going to affect anyone's viewing? Can you just explain in details, please?
Yes. Sorry. Thank you, Chair. Yes, the boundary wall referred to is at the back of the property with some overgrown ivy on it. I can't recall if I had a picture in the presentation of the back of the boundary wall. But that boundary wall is quite a large boundary wall, but there's no proposals to that. Ivy that can be cut away with no consent needed from authority. But so the back boundary wall is to remain.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Crowe.
Thank you, Chair. My question is really about building up to the boundary. It seems to me that number 10 has built along their boundary of the garden with number 12. As a result of that, number 12 is proposing to inset its own extension to the rear. So my kind of question is, does the council have a policy or guidelines about people building along the garden boundary? Because it seems to me it's almost a kind of first come, first serve basis. And if you consider if number 14 wanted to extend, presumably they would have to inset away from number 12's proposed extension. So as I say, it seems like first come, first served. But I'd just like to know, what is the policy, if we have one, about building along the boundaries of gardens?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. There's no specific policy on how high you can be on the boundary or whether you can be on the boundary at all. Generally speaking, single-story extensions can go up to the boundary, and a lot of the times people adjoin each other's single-story extensions to gain more floor space. The situation we have here, as you see, let me know if you site photographs put up again, but the situation we have here is that on the single-story extensions at number 10, they've put windows vertically facing on the boundary, facing into number 12's garden. So in order to not adjoin the wall to there, they've stepped it in. So the applicants have sought to mitigate that. It does go beyond that sort of line, but only up to one of those windows out of 3. But let me know if you to show the photographs again.
Okay, any other questions?
Yes, from me, Councillor Alan Brittis.
Sure, Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. Just if Tim would inform us about the planning history of this particular property, and also the percentage of houses along Cecil Road that have nice extensions, and could he show us that awful picture of the back of number 12, and so that we can get a sense of what the applicant wants to improve on.
Sure.
Yeah, just showing the screen, Chair. In terms of planning history, there is no specific planning history for this property. This has got a useful photograph to show. So neighbouring properties in the road, you see that the this is number 10 here, number 12, number 14. So number 10 have the deeper garden start this side, and so they've infilled their side extension here, and then they have doors out to the back garden here, and then the rear building line for these properties, the gardens come down here, and so you can see over the years, some people have done the top floor additions with lean-to additions as well. Although this one comes slightly beyond the building line, it's single story only, we don't consider that to be visually harmful or harmful to neighbouring amenity as set out in the report. So that just gives you a sort of snapshot of the variety of extensions in the area, as you can see.
Okay.
And the picture of the back. Can we see the picture of the back of number 12? So that's where the improvement will take place.
That's right. Yeah, here, up here, and this would be removed. That's a flat roof section removed and rebuilt.
Yeah. So the vast majority of houses in Cecil Road have had their extensions. And thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Right now
That's
we go
the South
to
Gate. Got his hand.
another
Yeah.
question. That's the South Gate, right?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's everyone seems to agree that this extension will exceed the building line by 85 centimetres, but you've described that, Mr. Bryson, as not materially harmful. Can we put any kind of quantity to that? What would be materially harmful? Would it be 1.5 metres, or is it in fact a judgment issue, and therefore our judgment issue as the committee?
It's a judgment issue, you're correct. So with every application, we have to judge it on its merits. We get lots and lots of householder applications to extend. A lot of the times it is very close-knit with neighbouring properties. We have lots of housing stock like this where it's all lots of terrace houses. So it is a judgment basis, clearly at some point extending back, it will become harmful at some point. But this application is 85 centimeters beyond the building line, which is in officer's opinion not to be significantly large.
Okay, thank you. If there are no more questions, we'll move on to the debate. So any councillors, members of the panel want to speak on this? And again, I can't see you putting your hands up. No?
Yes.
Sorry, Councillor Dean.
Councillor Dean.
Steve, yeah, then Councillor Steve and Councillor Crowe.
I think I have to say that the presentation by the applicant was probably the best I've heard, because they fully understood the issues faced by her neighbours. I don't understand why it's been acceptable that the extension goes 85 centimetres further out than anything else. There's nothing in the presentation from the applicant which said it was required, but I do fully understand why they actually want to do this. But I would rather that the council had said to the applicant, look, bring this in 85 centimetres, you're in line with everybody else, it makes a lot of sense, and it doesn't break any of our guidelines. And I still would rather that be, but that depends on what the rest of the committee think.
Okay, Councillor Crowe and then McGrath. You're about the only person on my screen, so I can see you. Councillor Crowe first.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Alan Brittis was going to speak before me, but I'll go and.
Yeah,
Alan
you go,
Brittis.
and then Alan Brittis. Yeah.
I think we made a mistake. Someone made a mistake in granting the original fill-in extension at number 10. But be that as it may, I don't think it's a question of two mistakes making a right. We should preserve the building line and preserve the integrity of that and the gardens. So I would have thought that this 85 centimetres is beyond the building line isn't right, and I'm not in favour of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lambritis.
Thank you. I am in favour of this application. As Councillor Dean said, the applicant was knowledgeable, was sensitive, offered solutions with regard to the dampness. And I think at the end of the day, we are not the experts. We have the experts here. That's Mr. Tim Bryson, Neil Milligan, and we need to give them the discretion to use their judgment. And 85 centimetres is neither here nor there. And I think having looked at the picture of the back of this property, having looked at all the other properties, all very well extended, looking very good and well done to the residents for investing in their housing stock here in the London Borough of Merton, I think we should go ahead and approve this application.
Okay, Councillor McGrath.
Just to I find myself agreeing with Councillor Alan Brittis. I think it's not a huge difference, 85, and I think it should be perfectly acceptable. And we should. I shall certainly vote for this.
Okay, if there are no further comments, I'm going to move to the vote, which we'll do first by show of hands. So I'm again going to have to ask Brother Alan to count, and then we may move to a Zoom vote, but we may not have to. So the officer's recommendation is grant planning permission subject to conditions. Can we see all those in favour of that recommendation?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm seeing 6. Show of hands.
6. Those again.
Against, I'm seeing 3.
And my 1 is the 10th one, which is not voting. So we don't need to do a Zoom poll. That's clearly passed 6-3. Okay, thank you on that one. We move on to, as I said, we're missing, skipping until the end, number 6 and 7. 8 has been withdrawn, so we move to number 9, which is Unit C and D, Elm Grove Business Centre. in Hillside Ward. And for this one, we have Tim Bryson again is the officer.
Thank you, Chair. Members, this application site is within end of Elm Grove in what's called the Elm Grove Business Centre. The site currently comprises workshop buildings situated here in the southern corner of the site. The site access is from the end of Elm Grove and through the business park round to the back corner here. The application itself is for 2 additional floors to the single-storey part of the building to form two-bedroom residential flats. Access would be from the front through to a shared stair court with the 2 flats. Each flat would be dual aspect, front and back. The bedrooms at the rear part of the site, living space at the front, and each flat would have its own rooftop outdoor terrace amenity area. You'll note within the report that the existing building has prior approval consent for flats. So that includes this adjacent adjoining section of the building and also the ground floor, which would be below these 2 flats. Should permission be granted this evening, officers have recommended a condition ensuring that this proposal cannot go ahead unless it is done in conjunction with the prior approval consent. So officers have made that clear within the report. Turning to the elevations, so the extensions would be going up here. It would be brick with feature windows. The design is been designed to mimic the external alterations which have got permission to facilitate that prior approval change of use on this part of the building. So the applicant has shown the existing building that it adjoins with the proposed extensions, which is correct because that's the current situation. So moving through, I do have a 3D aerial view, which is quite useful. Again, from Google, which shows the business park, and it has been subject to a number of applications. So a lot of the applications have been subject to what's called prior approval change of use, from commercial to residential units. So this has happened over here on this part of the site. You can see this building here as well. This used to be commercial, that is now residential with small outdoor, you can see the first floor outdoor balconies here. There's planning permission being implemented here, which is for 6 houses with office floor space behind. The application site tonight is down here, which is this unit here. And this unit here has the prior approval consent in place. There is also planning permission for 3 3-bedroom townhouses here. And there is also an application currently pending with us, which is for prior approval to change of use this commercial building to flats to the right here, but that is undetermined. So that's just to give you a shot of the business park currently. As I said, it has been subject to a lot of applications for change of use via the permitted development legislation route from commercial to residential. So it has largely becoming a residential area, which is happening over time. Site pictures, as you can see, so the application site is here. That's the building which would be subject to the prior approval change of use, and that's the neighbouring building there. And that's looking back within the park itself. That is one of the implemented prior approvals as referred to earlier in that 3D visual aid. Chair, if I turn your attention now to the modification sheet, you'll note the additional representation received from Environmental Health Officer recommending an additional condition. And also, officers have consulted Network Rail as the site is within 10 metres of the railway embankment. So the recommendation has changed as we haven't got a response from Network Rail as yet, but it is changed to granting permission subject to no objection received from Network Rail. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, speakers on this, we have one objector who will have 3 minutes, and that's Michael Mundavan.
Yeah, good evening, Michael Mundavan. Thanks. I'm going to share my screen, if I may, with the panel. I'm not sure if that'll work. Let me bring up. I would like to, thanks, Mr. Bryson. He did, you explained a lot of what I want to go into. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
You can. Okay. So I would like to point out that the Watson Diesel site that Mr. Bryson kindly pointed out, it's within the Elm Grove Business Park. This is a single owner, same developer. It comprises 7 or 8 industrial units. Some of them are still in industrial use, and 3 or 4 are under development, providing residential accommodation. This site has been subject to over 35 applications. It's been enormous, and as a local resident lives on Elm Grove, we are all suffering from application fatigue. Most of these have been prior approval, and those applications have subsequently been crept out with full plans applications. So this is very typical. The development so far throughout Elm Grove Business Park, we are disappointed. We are pro residential development, but what we're getting is all dense 4-story monoliths, providing all 1 and 2 bed flats, very limited parking in the site. The spaces within the applications we find to be misleading. So there's duplication of parking spaces between applications. There is no green space whatsoever. Really limited vehicle access, which I'll come on to. No bin space, no cycle storage, because it's all been done on PD. And where there are conditions like bin space, cycle spaces, these are ignored by the developer. He's been extremely cynical, we feel. There are some outstanding enforcement issues today. The flats that are being built that exist there, we believe, have very poor outlook. They look into courtyards, small window apertures. It doesn't allow diversity, dormitory blocks. And I mention again, no access, limited vehicle access. There is a big problem with parking and deliveries. So residents in these blocks, in spite of them being parking free, still own cars and will park in areas in Rains Park and on Elm Grove over weekends. And deliveries, tradesmen double park on Elm Grove. There's no decent access into the site. This is the access, Mr. Bryson, over the summer. I accept there's some construction vehicles, but there is allocated parking either side of that road. And so we consider this to be extremely dangerous, unacceptable. I've been down there with Councillor Daniel Holden, and I mean, just to walk up there is atrocious. There are no walkways. So if you imagine a girl with a pram coming through there, it would be absolutely hazardous.
That's 3 minutes, Chair.
Okay. Can I just finish off, sir?
No, sorry, that's the 3 minutes. We're going to have
Okay.
to cut you off. The agent, Ian Felgate from Brooks Architects, you have a similar 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening. I would like to address...
And sorry, before you start, if Michael could stop sharing his screen, please.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, Ian Felgate, start again, please.
Thank you. I'd like to address some of the issues raised in objection to this application, particularly in association with this application rather than other buildings around the site. Firstly, with regard to overlooking and privacy, the proposed 2 flats are on an extension to an existing building. The building is located in the corner of Crown All Works Industrial Estate. The nearest residential buildings that look towards the site, albeit at an oblique angle, is Bell House, a former warehouse that's been converted to 5 houses under a prior approval. Bell House is 31 metres from the closest windows on this proposal. And beyond that are the gardens of houses in Elm Grove. The closest garden is 45 metres from the proposal, and Bell House is between the two. The flats will not cause unacceptable overlooking to any residential properties or their immediate amenity spaces. With regard to overdevelopment, this proposal shows none of the recognisable symptoms of overdevelopment. Both flats exceed minimum space standards for 2-bedroom dwellings by a significant margin, and all the rooms also exceed the standards. The flats are dual aspect with large windows and will receive plenty of natural daylight. They also have amenity spaces that are well in excess of the minimum standards, and there is adequate space for bin and cycle storage. The proposal does not represent an overdevelopment of the site. With regard to the height of the development, the proposed flats will increase part of the existing building to 3 stories. The rest of the building is currently 2 stories, but has consent for elevational changes that will raise it to a similar height as the proposal. The closest houses in Elm Grove are 3 stories with pitched roofs, while new buildings either side of the entrance to the industrial estate in Elm Grove are 4 stories high and 1 has roof terraces. The closest houses in Elm Grove have 3, sorry, I said that already. A 3-story building in this location is therefore entirely appropriate. With regard to parking, the proposed flats will be car-free. This will be enforced by a legal agreement which will prevent residents obtaining parking permits for the adjacent roads. The site has a relatively low PTAL rating, but it is within walking distance and cycling distance of Wimbledon Town Centre and its station.
1 minute remaining.
And it is close to local bus stops. 2 cycle spaces will be provided for each flat. The roads within the estate are shared surfaces. This is not unusual in residential areas, and all are relatively short with tight turns, so traffic speeds will be low. As part of the ongoing works to the industrial estate, the developer will ensure the access roads are adequately lit and safe to use. In general, a general comment about the estate. Crown All Works Industrial Estate was previously in a rundown condition and suffered from traffic issues. In particular, large lorries, including articulated lorries, visited it often, completely blocking Elm Grove. Over the past few years, the industrial estate has been developed via a mixture of full planning applications and prior approvals. As a result, the majority of the buildings have been greatly enhanced or rebuilt and converted to residential use. The area has been significantly improved over the last few years, and when construction works are complete, the estate will have been transformed beyond recognition. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Tim, Bryson, any particular comments on those 2 contributions?
Chair, I think there has been a lot of applications we have dealt with on this site. Some have been approved, some have been refused, and as you can see in the planning history, some have been withdrawn. So we have dealt with a lot of applications, and a lot of the ones where they've actually implemented has been the conversion of the buildings under prior approval procedure. Under that particular element of permitted development right legislation, we can only look at certain things. But what we have done is sought the flats to be permit free. So they can't get car parking permits to the new flats, and that is to be the case for this additional 2. So really, Chair, it's just to say that yes, we've dealt with a lot of applications, but it's one of these sites where has accumulated over time, but through a lot of it through the permitted development legislation process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, now questions of clarification from members of the panel.
So we got Councillor Dean.
Yep.
Councillor Crowe.
Yep.
And I don't see anyone else.
Okay.
Councillor Alan Bretis.
And Alan Bretis. Okay.
And Councillor Draper.
And Draper.
Yeah.
Okay, do them in that order. So Councillor Dean first, David.
Let's have a number of questions for officers. Going back to planning application 3180, that was a change from industrial to housing. Was that permitted development? Was there nothing you could do about that? That's the first question. And depending on your answer, I'll ask you a second one.
Okay.
Yes, it was. That was a prior approval application under permitted development.
Okay. And do you know how much, is there any affordable homes in that application?
There aren't. No, that was for 8 flats for that application.
So, and the rest of that building, which at the moment is designated for jobs, employment, if an application came up for that, would that come under permitted development or not?
Sorry, if which building? Sorry, Councillor Dean.
So you know the big building. So initially, the larger building, the 6-storey building, was to be all industrial, and this is designated within the policies document as a business park. And at some stage, there was a proposal to turn that industrial building into housing, which was withdrawn. And my question is, if they came back to you and wanted to put housing there instead of industrial, would that come under permitted development?
The permitted development rights. So a lot of the permitted development rights relate to a change of use of a building. So they can apply for planning permission again for a new build residential block or flats, which is what those applications were, which were withdrawn in the committee agenda, and they'll have to be assessed on their merits. So in terms of permitted development rights, no, I don't believe they could apply to knock down the buildings and rebuild. I know the permitted development rights have been changed recently, and off the top of my head, it's a very long document, but I can't fully guarantee that. But
It's
yes.
okay, Tim, I understand. So the question for you, not for tonight's meeting to answer.
Okay, well,
David, it's very important. No, it's very important.
No, I'm going to stop you there.
It's very important because this leads to the question on this one.
Councillor Dean, we need to stick to discussing the actual building at hand.
I am,
nearby.
And I need to answer the question.
They are relevant. I'm going to move
to
Councillor Crowe, if I may.
I've still got some questions to this.
I may come back to you later, Councillor.
Well,
Dean.
Chair, the information is not in this pack, and to make a decision, I need to ask the questions. If this is permitted development, there's a very different question to if it's required for planning. And there's no affordable homes here. And I need to ask the questions, which are not in this pack. I'm very happy for you to ask other councillors, but I do need to ask the questions to make the decision here.
Okay, I'll go to the other 3 councillors, then come back to you, Councillor Dean. So, Councillor Crowe.
Thank you, Chair. The pictures that show the industrial park, access seems a bit chaotic and constrained, and I note that we are conditioning the provision of cycle parking arrangements, cycle access, and refuse collection arrangements. And I'm just not feeling very comfortable that these things are conditioned. I think they should be presented here and should be part of our decision-making process. So my question is, do we actually have the power, does this committee have the power to defer this application until the refuse and cycling arrangements are available for us to consider?
Okay, well, of course we do have that power, but it isn't usual. We normally, when we do allow developments, we allow those details to be worked out later. This is the normal case of affairs. Councillor Alan Breaches.
Thank you. I've actually seen this whole area developed over the years because my daughter, or our daughter, is a member of the yoga club right at the end to the left of the development. And so being the good father that I am, I've given her all the lifts she needs over the years, and I've seen this development. Can Tim confirm there was a printers initially, and there were a lot of complaints from the residents about the level of lorries, pickups, deliveries. So over the years, the residents have complained about the industrial estate and the businesses that were there. And can he just confirm what everyone wants or prefers is dual aspect? Will that be a feature? Rooftop amenity areas, will that be a feature? And that light industry, and that, as Councillor Dean has asked, is there a percentage of the what percentage of this has been facilitated by the current government's prior approval permitted development regulations? And so I would urge Councillor Holden and various others to look to their governments that have allowed industrial to go to residential. But those, is it dual aspects? Are there rooftop amenities? Were there complaints about the industrial estate, light industrial estate? And what level of has this been facilitated by the current governments, going back to Eric Pickle's prior approval and permitted development?
Thank you, Chair. I can't confirm whether there's been complaints about the industrial park when it was up and running. I do know, obviously, that the buildings, the planning permission being implemented for the larger buildings did replace some existing business buildings, but I can't confirm, unfortunately, whether we've had actual formal complaints on lorry movements. Clearly, over time, with residential use does generate a different sort of to and froing from the business park in comparison to commercial uses. With regards to the plans, so with the the two flats would be dual aspect of a decent size, and both flats would have access to each private roof terrace in terms of its design. And in terms of percentage of prior approvals on the site, the best photograph is probably the 3D view. As I said, we've had prior approval applications over here for residential, this building here, and this building here. And as I say, there is one pending on this unit. Those prior approval applications are subject to permitted development legislation, where we can only look at that. And unfortunately, we can't secure affordable housing through those either, because the legislation doesn't allow us.
Councillor Dean's got his hand up.
So the first question is about the designation. So my understanding was designated as a business park. I'd just like to know what the current situation is from officers, and based on your answer, I need to give you other questions.
So under the local plan, it's not got a designation as a strategic industrial location, for example, or a business park per se. It is what we would call a scattered employment site, where it has some offered protection under policy, but it's not a designated strategic industrial location, for example, within the local plan.
So the on page 113, 4.7, going back to planning application 3180, it's not clear to me, was that did you have to grant that because of permitted development, or did you grant that because you thought it was a good plan?
So that was a permitted development application where we had to look at certain criteria only.
Okay. So currently there are no restrictions on any lorry size at all. So the biggest HGVs can go along this road at any time, or is there any restrictions?
I can't confirm that, I'm afraid. I don't know the answer to that specifically.
And in terms of pavements, so if this is becoming residential, looking at the plans and checking the site yesterday, I couldn't see any pavements from the 3 new areas where there's going to be residential. All I can see is what I would term as a road or a car park where there were many lorries, and many of those more than 7.5, in my opinion, I have to say I'm not an expert at all, bigger than 7.5 tons. So are there any pavements that will allow the people in these houses to walk along to get to Elm Grove, or do they have to share the road with any size of heavy goods vehicle?
So there are no pavements. You're right, within this business park access road. As a lot of the applications we've dealt with is change of use to the buildings only, and so that's what we've had to deal with. So yeah, it's a shared surface, but that is the situation.
Yeah, but this one isn't permitted development, so you have more powers here to ensure that the people living there have a pavement with lights going on to a public pavement. I'm assuming this is private ground, but you still have power to ask them to put in an area for pedestrians.
We do. I mean, the application is for 2 flats. And in combination with the prior approval changes of use, there'll be 10 flats there. But in terms of putting in a pavement, we have to be able to consider what's reasonable. So our advice is that we can't specifically seek an actual pavement all the way to Elm Grove Road.
Okay, I think I'm going to go back.
Councillor Draper,
yes.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, mine's a bit simpler, and you may not be able to answer it, Tim. I mean, it's quite clear from your overview drawing that there are still some units being used for industrial purposes. I noted in particular one called Aquatint, which seems to be right bang in the middle of the industrial estate. My question, and I say you may not be able to answer it immediately, is that how much industry is still carrying on? We saw pictures that Councillor Dean referred to just now of a large car park full of vehicles. How much is being used for industrial purposes? And this is the difficult bit. How do the industries and the residents manage to correlate under those circumstances? That bears in mind that, you know, we can't do anything about permitted development. It's horrible, but there it is. This is something that we could do something about. Do we really want to add misery upon misery, or is that misery being exaggerated? Thank you.
Chair, in terms of how much, I can share my screen again to look at the site. So you do have a car MOT workshop here, and there is some industrial use on this building here with access round. You come in round the back here. The site itself is currently a workshop, but as I say, it has prior approval granted for change of use to residential. So what we have done, we have, because this area, the access through here to this area courtyard here, clearly we don't find 2 flats on their own here acceptable, which is why we've conditioned that the implementation of this can only go ahead in conjunction with the prior approval change of use application, which will change the courtyard here and change it to residential only up until this point here. In terms of navigating the way through, as I said, it is a shared surface. The visibility is obviously good down here. It's a very short road, but that is a factor that's happened over time here with the implementation of residential and the existing businesses that are there. So that is something that people we have to accommodate. Yeah, so hope that helps.
Thank you. Okay, if there are no more questions, I'm going to move on to
Councillor Henry.
Councillor Henry, you have a
Yes,
question.
thank you, Chair. I just want to ask Tim, if the permission is granted, how secure and safe it will be for the residents who live there whilst work taking place, for instance, with pollution and all the rest?
Sorry, Councillor, did you mean work taking place in regard to?
Yes, the construction, when, you know, building starting to develop, if we do grant the permission, you know, how they're going to protect residents from the dust and all the rest.
Sorry, the existing residents on the
Yes.
business park.
Yes. Sorry, I don't know if it's appropriate to ask. I don't know if.
No, that's fine, Jane. I mean, I presume the standard conditions about considerate construction and hours of construction and looking after trying to inconvenience as little as possible the residents of the estate as present will be listed in the conditions. Okay, should we move to the debate? Any councillors want to speak on this one?
Councillor Southgate.
Southgate.
Councillor Dean. Councillor Allenbreetis. Councillor Draper.
Okay, those four in that order. Councillor Southgate first. Peter.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean the flats, you know, meet all the criteria in terms of size, dual aspect, amenity space. We can't fault anything there. But I did visit the site yesterday afternoon, and it is a mess. It is. Ahead of me were a young couple, looking as if they might indeed be looking at some of the other flats on the site, and they were tiptoeing around the puddles. That it's. I mean, I can't imagine anybody buying it in anything there in the present condition. I do think we ought to have a condition here to provide a secure footway to Elm Grove. Prospective buyers, one would hope, would not buy in its present condition, but as it is, it really is not something that I feel we can support. It's a simple condition to add, but without it, I'd say no.
Okay, this is obviously something Councillor Dean raised in his questions as well. I'd like to, before we move on to Councillor Dean's comments, ask Tim Bryson, the planning officer, would that be an easily wordable condition we could put in that a footway is provided that goes from this development to the rest of Elm Grove? And would that be reasonable? Could it be appealed, for instance?
Well, any condition on a decision notice can be appealed. They have a right to do that. In terms of a condition wording, yes, the issues will be about implementation of whether there's a change of surface and these sorts of issues, and it goes outside of the red line of the site. But it still may be within the applicant's ownership because of the blue line outlined on the location plan. I mean, it is a matter of judgment. There's 2 flats proposed here, but there is more flats granted consent via the prior approval process on the same building. So there will be a lot more footfall to and from this particular corner of the site for it. So in terms of justification, I mean, it could be justified given it is in the corner of the site. And it would be a simply condition of a prior to first occupation condition for the works to be done.
Okay. We are going to move on just a second to the other speakers, but I think it seems and before more people have spoken, it seems that we are kind of agreed as a committee in terms of what people have said so far, that we might like to put in that condition, or at least get our highways officers to speak to the developers and make sure that something is worked out there. Putting it as a condition makes absolutely sure. Not doing so, but allowing it anyway, and just encouraging them to work with highways department to put something in, you know, that could work as well. That's up to the committee to decide, but we'll carry on. Councillor Dean.
So if you look back at the history of this site, at some stage it was completely a business park. I'm relatively sure it was designated, but that may not be the case. But housing started to creep in, and it was sort of a joint thing where you lived and worked in the same place. And therefore, the argument at the time when that came to planning was we weren't talking about accommodation, we were talking about a live-work situation. But then we've had the larger building on the south side has had many applications, and the final one was 3180. And that was a proposal to put housing in there. And each time they were withdrawn. Now, none of us on this committee know why they were withdrawn, but I imagine it was because they realized they couldn't get those applications through council officers, let alone the planning committee. Councillor Alan Brittis is correct. The law changed on permitted development, I think, back in 2011, and many people have been critical of that, and that includes Conservative councillors. And when it comes to permitted development, the officers are in a very difficult position, and they've had to say yes. It's my belief that developers on this site have taken advantage of permitted development and allowed pushed through accommodation with no affordable homes and no need to put any proper roads and pavements and lighting in. So I accept what Councillor Alan Brittis says. The current situation with this is not the same. And I've checked this site probably 4 or 5 days. As you probably know, I'm slightly obsessive about things. I always make sure that I visit the site at different times on different days. And I want to make sure that what we're seeing in front of us is the reality. And I have to say, there's only 4 pages here. And sometimes on planning commission applications, we get 200 pages, but there are 4 pages here. Now, the last 2 pages talk about council policy. And the first 2 pages talk about this application. Now, if you read it quickly, it looks as if that policy should apply to the application, but it doesn't. The last 2 pages are generic policies, not specific policies about this site, and therefore they don't count. And I think all of us on this committee would be thinking about, if you live in any property, then the council, as the planning authority, needs to think about 3 things. One of them is pavement space so they can walk safely. One of them, given the events of the last few weeks, is lighting. And the third one is to ensure that they have the right space to live a good life. Now, except the last one is arbitrary. But on the basis that the properties to the right of this building are also going to be under permitted development accommodation, and these are too, there is no excuse not to put a pavement in from the west to the east of this. And the council can do that, and we can make it a condition. And frankly, if this council loses the appeal, I think that's a good appeal to lose. I think every single person here should be saying that people have the right for safety, and we should get this. Chair, it's very important that I finish. It's very important that I finish it. Chair, it's very important that I finish this. Everyone has the right, and we should reject this unless a pavement and lighting is added. At the moment, this is not an acceptable application, in my opinion.
Okay, so that was basically in favour of Councillor Southgate's proposal that we discussed about putting in and a condition. There were some other points as well, but the condition on the pavement. Councillor Ambritis. Stephen, are you there?
Yes, here we go.
There he is.
Yes, thank you very much. Can I just remind the members of the Planning Application Committee about the proposal that we're considering tonight. It's not an overview of what's happened there over the years. It's not, I don't like that to the east or to the west. It is about 2 self-contained flats. We should not punish developers for what has gone on before. We need to look at the application as it is today. And I'm happy with a condition with regard to pavements, and certainly David Dean is spot on with regard to lighting. And I'm sure the developers wouldn't object to all that. So I just remind colleagues, was a rundown area, had articulated lorries, it's now dual aspect, it's rooftop amenity, it's mixed use at this moment in time, although I appreciate, and as a former spokesperson for businesses, that the light industrial is fading, but that is entirely down to permitted development prior approval. Colleagues, I think we shouldn't beat ourselves over this. We shouldn't punish developers. We should look at the actual application today. And I agree with Councillor Southgate. I agree with Councillor David Dean on pavements and lighting, and let's approve with those conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Draper.
Hi, cheers. Thank you very much, Chair. And to a large extent, I'm agreeing with what Councillor Southgate has said, and to an extent with what Councillor Dean has said. Yeah, of course we shouldn't beat up developers over what's happened, what the ridiculous legislation of prior approval permitted development. I mean, but it is a fact that prior approval permitted development takes no account of things like pedestrian safety. And, you know, it's something that we as councillors do have to take account of. And I'd like to go a tiny bit further than what Peter has put forward in saying that not only should we look at pavements, we should look at getting the surface of the road into a reasonable condition, and in time we should actually look to the segregation between industrial vehicle movement and residential vehicle movement. That's basically it. Thank you. Well, by the way, the actual development itself, great stuff. Very New York, very Chicago. You know, the upstairs from an industrial building. Great stuff if you like that sort of thing. But it's putting it in the context of a small industrial unit in Wimbledon, and we have to be very careful about that, colleagues. We have to think about the safety of the people who are going to be living there before we think of anything else. Thank you.
Okay,
Councillor Henry.
Councillor Henry. Joan.
Thank you, Chair. I must apologise. My mic went a while ago, so I missed quite a few things. However, I catch up with Councillor Alan Brittis and the rest. I definitely could, you know, would like to see pavement, proper road, and also lighting. And away from that, I think it's, you know, it would be a wonderful asset for the area. And of course, as we all know that we are short of housing, so definitely I'll go with the application under those 3 circumstances need to be addressed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It's a shame, Joan, that you missed Councillor Dean's contribution. I think I'm going to move to the vote, which will be on grant planning permission subject to conditions and section 106 agreement, plus a condition to be worded later by officers on pavements, and I think we should say and lighting.
Chair, I would like to propose a rejection based on safety.
Okay, well, if we don't vote for the proposal for recommendation, then there is a rejection.
So are you saying that those conditions are sound and our officers accepting those conditions?
The proposal is that the recommendation as stands, plus the condition on providing a pavement and lighting to from the site to the rest of Elm Grove, which after this evening officers will word in an appropriate manner. Okay, that is the proposal. Again, a show of hands votes, and Fazana, if you're able to count for me all those in favour of the recommendation with the extra condition.
Counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 4.
7, 4. Are those against?
1, 2. Sorry, 1, 2 against.
2 against. That's 9, and the 10th one is my non-voting. That one is passed. Thank you very much. The next on the agenda, that's number 9 done. Number 10 has no speaker, so we're leaving till later. So now we're going to move to agenda item 11, 10 St Mary's Road, Wimbledon, in the Village Ward. And the planning officer there is Tim Bryson again.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to share my screen. Bear with me a second. Members, the application site is on St Mary's Road in Wimbledon. The site comprises a detached house with a front driveway and rear garden. The site surroundings are largely detached residential properties. Proposal itself. So the proposal is for erection of a swimming pool, open air swimming pool in the rear garden of the property. The swimming pool will be 3 meters wide by 15 meters long. The proposal also includes the plant room building at the back of the site here, which would have a sedum roof and would be timber clad. Proposal also includes the planting of 7 trees adjacent to the pool building along the northern boundary. And some other hard surfacing alterations within the rear itself. As you can see, the proposed site plan here, there's a proposed proposed swimming pool here, and this is the cross section showing the swimming pool. It'll be between 1.2 and 1.8 meters deep, and you can just see the line of pleach trees are proposed along that boundary. This is an aerial view of the site. The site is here, just showing the character surrounding area. Some people do have outdoor pools in their gardens within the local area. Some site pictures. So this is the pool would be on this side down here. You can see some existing pleach trees on the boundary here, which the applicant would do adjacent to the pool down this boundary here as well. And the plant room building at the back would be there. There is an existing building in the garden already, which is subject to 2017 permission for outdoor home office, and that's just looking back at the rear end of the site, with the swimming pool proposed would be here. That picture's turned sideways for some reason, but that just shows the tree. A tree was removed through a tree works application, as it was causing damage to this boundary wall here. But as a picture sent in just shows the tree, unfortunately it's sideways. Overall, members, application for the outdoor swimming pool we consider to be acceptable, subject to conditions set out within the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We have 2 objectors on this one. So as I mentioned before, they will have 3 minutes each, one after another, and then the applicants will have 6 minutes after that. So the first objector on my list is Susan Cusack. Once you're ready, you have 3 minutes. Welcome to the meeting.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Susan Cusack and I live at 6 St Mary's Road, one house away from the proposed 15-metre swimming pool, plant room, etc. I speak for other surrounding neighbours. In order to assist you all, we sent you a summary yesterday morning along with explanatory photographs graphically demonstrating the missighting of number 10, the felling of a huge healthy eucalyptus to make way for this pool, as well as the flooding into our garden, which I hope you've had time to view and digest. Climate change should be at the forefront of our thinking, and with that in mind, this is an extremely environmentally unfriendly application. Exercise is wonderful for our mental and physical well-being, but excavating the entire length of a garden and building an enormous underground dam for the sake of one small family is very inconsiderate to the environment and to the surrounding neighbours who are in extremely close proximity. Noise nuisance will be an issue. This application contravenes at least 3 planning laws. DMF1, support for flood risk management. Surrounding gardens have flooded in recent years since the excavation of 3 basements in a row on a hill. This is a flood risk area. In addition, the hydrology report is invalid. Up-to-date information is required in line with Merton's own planning policy and the PAVC. The engineers who supplied the previous borehole information in 2014 would not use it in this instance, but would undertake a new survey given the 3 basements excavated at numbers 10, 8 and 12, and the removal of a huge eucalyptus tree from number 10's garden where the pool is designed to be. It contravenes DMD2C, Merton Basement Guidance and Policy. It also contravenes DM02, Nature Conservation, Trees, Hedges and Landscape Features, as well as a basement, which is already under 4 to 5 meters of the rear garden amenity space. The garden is currently mostly hard paved, has an office and a hot tub, and this would remove further vegetation as well as sinking a huge deep cement dam into the entire length of the garden. Who do we turn to when further flooding happens with climate change bringing warmer and far wetter weather? Just look at the flooding which has occurred this year and last year in the UK and locally.
1 minute remains.
Common land and parks have been turned into quagmires. This underground dam could create further water ingress and flooding. It is neither fair nor reasonable to cause such damage to neighbouring properties. Due to the overdevelopment of number 10, this application requires full planning permission, and therefore all the correct documentation should be supplied, including current hydrology information. As with emergency measures to introduce COVID-friendly walking and cycling schemes, we're facing a climate emergency, and so applications such as this should also be subject to emergency measures. If a scheme is not climate change positive, then it should not even be registered, let alone recommended for approval. Please demonstrate that this Planning Applications Committee is forward-thinking, aware of the environment and the changing climate, and will uphold Merton's own stated objective of being net zero carbon by 2050. This is an emergency. You can't just keep passing applications such as this and expect to get your stated climate change results. You have to start now. We would therefore request that this application is rejected and have given you at least 3 planning reasons to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The second objector I have is Mark Morgan on behalf of BERA. I'm assuming the RA stands for Residents Association. I don't know. I'm sure you'll let us know. Mark.
Good evening. My name is Mark Morgan and I'm speaking on behalf of the Belvedere Estates Residents Association, which covers 26 roads in and around Wimbledon Village, including St Mary's Road. By profession, I'm a commercial surveyor. We see BERA as a bridge between the planning department and the residents and realise the importance of working closely together. Whilst I'm sure you're aware that we do raise objections on behalf of residents, as we're doing here, we equally advise many residents that there is no case for objecting and instead try to encourage them to speak to applicants and reach a compromise. Not a day goes by without a planning issue being raised. We do our best to ensure fair play. This is a property where there has been considerable recent history and the applicant has obviously been well advised, but we are very concerned that there are a number of alarm bells. In 2016, a retrospective application was made and approved after the house was built in the wrong position. We as a group are strongly against retrospective consents, especially if a builder developer has any previous history of asking for retrospective consents. In 2020, an application was made and approved to remove a eucalyptus tree in order to replace a wall, despite it being protected in the original application. With climate change being top of most people's agenda, we are strongly against the removal of trees unless it is strictly required. Immediately after the tree was removed, a pre-app was made, followed by this application to build a swimming pool on the site of the eucalyptus tree, which had to be removed in order to replace a wall. Importantly, the application is supported by a 7-year-old report, which does not take into account all the changes in the immediate area. The planning process relies on an adherence to procedure and transparency. And if reports are not up to date or are inaccurate, it is impossible for them to be considered properly, either by the planning committee or by residents. This is one of the This is one of the cornerstones of the planning process. Excavation of basements and swimming pools potentially has a huge impact on neighbouring properties with a real risk of flooding, and hence it is vital to have detailed reports and any potential impact and a detailed method statement. We're very much of the view that this application shouldn't have been validated if the necessary reports were not available. By approving this application, not only would the planning department expose themselves to a possible legal challenge, as any decision taken would be reliant upon what is potentially flawed information, but importantly, the residents' confidence in the whole planning process would be seriously damaged. Consequently, we would respectfully ask that this application is rejected. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Mark. On behalf of the applicant agent, I have on my list Sam Hamilton and David Graham. You have 6 minutes between you. I'll leave it up to you to either one person take all 6 or change over in the middle at whatever time suits you. But you have 6 minutes in total.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take the 6 minutes if that's okay, and I'll speak on behalf of the applicant later within those 6 minutes. If that's okay with you. Thank you, Chair. The application for members is for a swimming pool, as well as the planting of 7 new trees. In addition to the existing 18 trees, a new lawn and planting beds. Plant storeroom will be very small, measuring 2 by 3 meters with a green sedum roof. To clarify, this is not a retrospective application. It's unusual that such an application would come before committee. And this is in part due to some inaccurate and misleading information which has been distributed locally. It's relevant to note that there are nearly the same amount of letters for support, including that from the immediate neighbour, than objections received. In terms of the eucalyptus tree, those works were consented in full consultation with the council and granted permission. The reason for the works was due to the tree pushing over the boundary wall, which the council agreed with, and you've seen photos this evening. Those works were in no way linked to the current application, and it's incorrect to suggest otherwise. They do not form part of the application before members. Whilst this is not normally the case nor required, the applicant commissioned an hydrology report to ensure neighbours are not affected. This report was based on boreholes as well as site visits by an engineer. The report demonstrates that the ground underneath the application property is gravel. This is highly permeable, whereas the ground underneath the neighbouring property to the south is clay, which acts as a barrier to water which flows to the south, including further to the objector's property further down St Mary's Road. The pool would be 1.8 metres deep and therefore would not reach the water table, which is 2.7 metres below ground level. The engineers confirmed there's no evidence of pooling or vegetation dieback, which is specifically associated with high groundwater levels. The neighbouring property to the south supports the application and has not complained about any flooding taking place at their property. This is relevant as it confirms that the issue of flooding further down St Mary's Road can be site specific. Notwithstanding the above, there would be a net improvement with stormwater being discharged into the stormwater sewage system, removing water that would otherwise soak into the ground below. A draft condition requires details of the proposed drainage system prior to implementation. This would enable a betterment to that which currently exists. So to conclude, pools are not unusual in this location, as you've seen in the images by the officer. However, members must not lose sight of the number of letters of support that have been sent to the council, including those from direct neighbours. So to recap, there's no loss of trees. 7 new trees will be planted in addition to the existing 18. The plant room and store will have a green sedum roof. There'll be new planting beds and lawn area, and an introduction of the SUDS drainage system, which will be agreed by officers prior to works commencing. This will remove excess water from around the site and improve the existing situation. On the basis of the above, the application accords with planning policy and we would request that members accept the recommendation of your officers and approve planning application. I'd like to now read out a quick statement from the applicants, Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton. We're a long-standing, hard-working family with 3 young boys. 7 years ago, we created a betterment to the built environment by building an attractive period-style home to replace rundown house with no architectural merit. We have subsequently sought to make fairly and modest improvements to our garden, which would ordinarily be considered permitted development. The veracity and inaccuracy of objections to our planning applications is wholly disproportionate to the planning issues at hand. Overall, the applications for our family home and garden have resulted in 6 visits to PAC with associated financial and emotional costs. We're not aware of any other Wimbledon family that have been required to do the same. The inequality of our treatment is highlighted by the fact of at least 7 letters have been sent to the council by 2 objectors. Those objectors have undertaken far greater development without the need for planning permission. One of the objectors installed a large garden gym building within the root protection of a large oak tree, which is subject to a tree preservation order and hard landscape most of the garden. The other objector, representing Bearer, appears to have a basement and also a swimming pool with extensive hard landscaping both near to our property and the conservation area. The application for a lap pool is submitted with the intention of enhancing both our and our children's mental and physical health, and we ask members to approve this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I believe Amy is going to read out a statement from Councillor Najib Latif.
Thank you, Chair. Both the objectors, Mark and Susan, have made extremely important and valid points on inadequate and out-of-date information supporting this application and the excessive flooding which is now occurring due to the construction of basements in the vicinity. I fully support their concerns. I want to share my first-hand experience on the current situation that is seriously affecting design consultants in the UK, a situation that maybe the members of the Planning Committee are not aware. I work for London-based engineering design practice, and up until last September, we were happily carrying out basement designs, swimming pool designs, and underground structures. Then our professional indemnity insurance came up for renewal. Not only did it increase 5-fold, but the insurance company imposed strict restrictions on basements and swimming pools. We are no longer allowed to carry out these designs because insurance companies believe underground structures are a very high risk due to flooding and structural damage. The reason for me telling you this is because the company is not alone. Almost every consultant in the UK will have the same restrictions imposed on them, and very few will be able to provide an acceptable level of insurance cover. This could very well result in applicants not being able to provide the level of information requested by Merton Council, because either their engineer is no longer allowed to design underground structures, or the engineer does not have the level of insurance cover required. Merton's own basement and subterranean guidance asks for an up-to-date construction methodology statement, CMS, which must include current and valid ground investigations, hydrology reports, localised surface water, nearby basements causing localised flooding, and an engineering design submitted by a suitably qualified engineer. As we have heard, the information supporting this application is out of date and no longer relevant. In addition, Stephen Hammond has expressed his concern about flooding in the Wimbledon area due to excessive underground development displacing water to neighbouring properties. If insurance companies are taking the view underground construction is a high risk, then the Planning Committee should do the same and defer this application. They should offer the applicant time to submit current and relevant supporting documentation as clearly stated in Merton Basement Guidance and Policy DMD2 Part C. If, however, the Planning Committee is minded to approve this application, then I would urge members to act responsibly and add conditions that the applicant provides new ground investigations and engineering design that clearly identifies nearby basements. Most importantly, the applicant must confirm and show evidence that his appointed engineer has adequate professional indemnity insurance cover and the policy allows them to undertake basements and swimming pool designs. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, that's the end of the contributions from outside of the committee. Now it's members of the committee to ask questions first of clarification. Oh no, sorry. Back to Tim Bryson. Is anything raised in all of those contributions you'd like to come back on?
Thank you, Chair. really, I think members, the application is before you because there is a condition on the permission for the house that removes permitted development rights. Ordinarily, this would be able to be undertaken under permitted development, so an application for permission is required. The application is not for a basement. It's for an outdoor pool, and therefore a hydrology and basement construction method statement and basement impact assessment is not technically required for this. However, the applicant has submitted a hydrology statement, which has been written by the same company that did the discharge of conditions for the drainage and basement construction on the main house itself back in 2014. So in all, the proposal is considered to be acceptable. 7 new trees are to be planted, which ordinarily would be under permitted development rights. So I hope that helps in the debate tonight. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you very much. Okay, questions from members to the officers. Questions of clarification.
We've got Councillor Crowe.
Okay, Councillor Crowe first. Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. Three questions, if I may. The first one is it wise, is it reasonable for us to take account of a report that is written in 2014? That's the first question. The second question concerns the objector number 6 has circulated photographs of surface water on her property. I was wondering if we had any information about the existence or not of surface water at number 8. And my third question is, in the event that this swimming pool does cause a flooding issue, what would be the remedy for residents at number 8 and 6? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the report submitted, the report in 2014 was the report which included borehole drilling on the site to establish the groundwater surface situation for the application for the new build property. Yes, it was done in 2014, but it does provide information about the ground conditions in that area on that site. We have to be proportionate to what the application is, and that is outlined in the basement SPD. In terms of the information required, this is for an outdoor swimming pool. It's not for a basement as such. It's shallower than the typical basement construction, and so it does have to we have to be proportionate to what the application is, and we think what has been provided is proportionate to what the application is in terms of the submissions in terms of hydrology. In terms of surface water at number 8, I am not aware of surface water at flooding at number 8, which is the immediate neighbouring property to the south. In terms of if flooding happens in the future to number 8 or 6, well, that would be a civil matter if someone thinks that surface water has specifically come from a neighbouring property or has been caused by a neighbouring property. So that is a civil matter that would be outside of the council's remit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions?
Councillor Alabritis.
Yep, Stephen.
Thank you. On the question of the 2014 bore drilling report, have there been on the new build in 2014? Have there been any complaints or any issues as a result of the new build subsidence, problems from either side of that new build? And from me, just go through that proportionality aspect. How important is that to deliberations of planning application committee members' proportionality. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Do we have any other questions? Okay, if not, then we'll open it to the general debate. Who would like to speak?
Councillor Alabritis, Councillor McGrath.
Alabritis and McGrath, in that order, please.
Thank you. I won't be long. I have been speaking quite a lot today. Reminds me of the Cecil Road issue. All houses, most houses around there have done their extension. They've done what they wanted to do, and there's been a complaint about a house that wants to do roughly what they're doing. So I think we need to be mindful of that in terms of fairness, and remind ourselves this is not a swimming pool underneath the house. It is not a basement swimming pool. It is a swimming pool in the rest of in towards the back of the house in the garden. We need to be mindful of that. I would support this.
Thank you, Councillor McGrath.
I mean, it doesn't seem to me that if somebody wants to build a swimming pool in their garden, it can be done safely, and our officers tell us it can be done safely, that it should really be any matter for any business of ours, and I'm happy to vote for this.
Excellent, thank you very much. If there are no other contributions, I shall move to the vote. The recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to conditions. All those in favour?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 in favour. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 in favour.
6 in favour. Those against?
I can't see no hands for against.
Okay, those non-voting. That's me.
1, 2, 3, 4 non-voting.
Right, 6 in favour, none against, 4 non-voting. That application is granted. Next up, item number 12, which is land to the rear of 2 to 6 Woodville Road, Morden, and Tim Lipscomb this time. Is Tim here?
Chair, I've been corresponding with Tim during the course of the meeting so far, so I'm assuming that he is here. I can certainly send him a message just to say that he's on.
Okay.
I can see his camera. He's there. Tim, can you hear us? Your mic's on, Tim.
Farzana, I've just received a message from Tim to say his Zoom link has broken. He has had a bit of a problem earlier on this evening with contacting or linking up with Zoom, and I think all he did was went out of Zoom and then logged back in again, and it seemed to restore the connection. So if members could just give Tim a moment's grace as he has prepared for the case.
Well, I think as it's 9 o'clock, we've dealt with 3 applications and we have 4 to come. We might take a 5-minute break here anyway, so people can go to the toilet, make a cup of tea. So let's adjourn the meeting for 5 to 10 minutes at the most and see you all back here then. And hopefully Tim Lipscomb will be back connected at that point.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Hello, Farzana, are you there? It's Tim Lipscomb here.
Hi, it's Amy. We can see and hear you now, Tim. Thank you.
Great. Yes, I had some problems. The meeting sort of ended on me just as I was about to hit start video. But thank you. I'll wait till the meeting resumes.
Thank you.
Okay, Farzana, I haven't been timing it. I don't know how long we've been off. Hello, Tim.
Hello. Yeah,
evening.
you got a couple of minutes.
Couple more minutes. Okay, thank you. Okay, I don't know how many of the members of the committee are back in their seats and ready to restart. We do have a good connection to Tim Lipscomb now, and we hope it lasts through his presentation.
Thank you, Chair.
I just want to double check with Farzana that before you start that all members of the committee are back in their seats and listening.
We're just waiting for Councillor Draper
Okay,
and Councillor Southgate.
right.
We're just waiting for Councillor Draper.
Okay, we'll give him another minute. If he's not back, we might have to start without him. Okay, Nick, Councillor Draper, are you there?
No, we can't. It's not back yet.
I'm assuming one of my colleagues is furiously WhatsApping him.
He's back.
Great. Okay. So item number 12, the land to the rear of 2 to 16 Woodville Road in Merton Park. And the officer is Tim Lipscomb. Your report, please.
Thank you, Chair. And apologies to the committee for the technical errors, and thank you for your patience. I will start by sharing my screen to talk you through the site photos and proposal. Hopefully you can now see a screen showing a photo of the street. So I will go through the photos and the plans as we go. The site is a triangular parcel of land adjacent to a railway line and to the rear of houses along Links Avenue and Woodville Road. This is the vehicular access that leads into the site. And that's another view down into the site from the road. This is a view back out along the access, so you can see that this access is also used to access existing garages. This is a view from, well, an elevated view from within the site towards the back of properties. In terms of orientation, you can just see the Merton Council Civic Building there. So the site is over here with the rear of existing houses there. This is part of the existing alleyway, so the site is actually over here. Later on, you'll see in the plans that part of the proposal is to resurface this area. And again, this is the site in here, neighbouring the site, another residential garage, which is accessed from the same access road. Here, this is a view from, again, elevated view from within the site, showing the rear of the houses along the main road, and the site currently hoarded off. As I say, it is next to the railway line, which is set on a bank several meters higher. So this fence here denotes the edge of the application site. So here you can see oh, sorry, I'm not sure if that's something you're also seeing. Bear with me. I also would like to show you the site on Google Maps so you can get a feel for the surrounding area. Okay, that doesn't seem to be working, so I will abandon that and attempt to go. Oh no, there it is. Just as a, please bear with me. It's I'm not sure what the issue here is. This was it was all fine going through it moments ago.
Tim, would it help if? Okay.
I think I'm going to have to move forward, certainly without showing you this particular site plan, because for some reason it seems it won't open now, I'm afraid. In terms of the actual apologies for this, members. I'm not sure exactly what the issue seems to be here. I think what I better do is take you through the Planning Explorer to show you the plans as they are, because obviously the presentation doesn't seem to be working.
Tim, would it help if I open my presentation?
It would. Unfortunately, a lot of the screens I wanted to share are set up on my monitor here, because there's two sets of history. But I think, given the circumstance, seeing as I can't show any of the presentation at the moment, that probably would be for the best. Thank you.
So I think you need to stop sharing your screen.
Yes, just trying to do that at the moment, but again, I'm not sure if it's actually responding.
Okay. Farzana, can I access the screen sharing, and then if Tim can just slowly take me through the drawings, I can sort of move from image to image.
Yeah, you should. So if you can, you not screen share. You should have option to screen share.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Oops. Okay, so this is.
Thank you, Jonathan. And
okay.
If we scroll through to the site plan,
okay.
if that will. Okay, so there we can see the site location plan, the triangular parcel of land. Could we leave it on the site plan amended? That should be 2 and 1 more on. Oh,
is that okay?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay.
So in terms of the proposal, it is for a 2-story chalet bungalow form building across the site to provide 8 residential units with private amenity space and 22 cycle parking spaces. You can see it is one single building which is staggered across the site, the amenity areas being to the rear. No off-street car parking is proposed. The building would occupy the majority of the site with a turning area for refuse collection and emergency vehicle access. So that's the turning head you can see on site there. The building will be formed of a series of pitched roofs with an eaves height of 4.1 meters and a maximum ridge height of 7.6 meters. Before we move on, sorry, I was going to say, before we move on to the elevations, I'd just like to point out the position of the refuse storage area, which is just to the end of the garden of number 4, if you can see. So it's within the turning head area. Could we move on to the next plan, please? Here you can see the ground floor layout. So you can see that turning head and the position of various things across the site a little more clearly. Could we move on to the next, please? And okay, so I don't know why these photos are oh, I think I've changed the order on my one, but this is the roof plan you can see, so the development across the site. Again, could you go on to the next plan, please? These are elevation drawings that you can see the heights of the buildings. Note that the eaves are significantly lower than would normally be expected for a 2-story building at 4.1 meters. Jonathan, could you move on to the next one, please? And these are the side elevations. Not so helpful because obviously you can't identify the real form of the buildings here. Could you move on to the next slide, please, Jonathan? Here you can see, in comparison to the main frontage buildings on Woodville Road, which is there where the hand is, and then it's an existing and proposed drawing, just to give you a feel for the scale of the development proposed. Could you move on to the next one, please, Jonathan? Here you can see the elevation drawings. We have sought amendments to the scheme as originally submitted, as we did have concerns over the size of the proposed units and not being subordinate in terms of being a backland development subordinate to the main frontage buildings. And could you move on, please, Jonathan? Here we can see vehicle swept path analysis drawings to show that a significant vehicle could access the site, and that relates to emergency vehicle access and refuse. Jonathan, could you move on to the next one, please? And it will be beyond the vehicle swept path analysis. And one more, please. And sorry, these are all ones I removed, but it's the standard. This is a CGI of the site. This is from the frontage. So whilst the rear gardens of the properties along there don't look like this, and most of them have outbuildings along the back. So if you discount everything this side of the fence, but beyond the fence is a view of the proposed dwellings, and you can just see that the turning head effectively is sort of the bottom left of the drawing there. And Jonathan, could you move on to the next drawing, please? Thank you. And that's the view. Again, there is a railway track there where we would be standing effectively at a raised level. So whilst it is a representation, it's not entirely what you would see in real life. I'm afraid I can't show you the drawings for this because I did have them ready to share, but an appeal was dismissed under a 2017 application. That was for 10 units across the site. That included fully rendered walls with a flat roof. The key differences between this current scheme and that appeal scheme are set out at paragraph 3.18 in the report. And at paragraph 5.5, the key findings of the inspector in dismissing the appeal are set out. There is also an extant permission from 2007 for the erection of 3 houses on site. Now, these are more traditional houses, so whilst the footprint is lesser, the height of the buildings permitted under the 2017 application are greater. They're more akin to regular detached dwellings rather than some kind of backland scheme. But I'm afraid I don't have the plans to show you immediately. The key issues in this assessment are set out at paragraph 7.1. A key factor in the assessment will be whether the proposal has overcome the concerns raised by the inspector in relation to the dismissed appeal. And Jonathan, you can just leave it on this one if you like, and perhaps later we'll come back to the site plan. But that roughly concludes all the slides. Thank you.
Okay. Do you want me to stop sharing the?
No, I'm quite happy for it to be in the background.
We'll stop sharing the screen for now because we're going to take the object from the agent's speeches first.
Okay, I will continue with the presentation, and I won't spend too long over it. As set out at paragraph 7.4, the housing mix is considered to be in line with policy and to be acceptable, and has overcome the inspector's concerns in that regard. In terms of the impact on the character of the area, this is set out in the report in detail, but the site is on a backland plot, wherein the principle of a subordinate form of development can be acceptable. It is a matter of judgment, but in this case, the height of the buildings in a chalet bungalow format with a suitable palette of materials is considered to sufficiently safeguard the character of the area whilst optimizing the potential of the site. The main visual impact would be residents' views to the rear of their properties. It is noted that this view would change quite significantly, but the proposed built form is considered to better respect the suburban character of the area, and due to the limited height of the proposed units, it's considered that the visual impact of the units would be acceptable and has overcome the concerns raised by the inspector in the previous appeal. In terms of neighbouring amenity, which is at paragraph 7.6, it is of note that the inspector was silent on the matter of neighbouring amenity in the recent appeal decision, which is quite unusual. Therefore, it's not clear whether this matter was deemed to be acceptable or not. However, set out at paragraph 7.6.3 onwards, and to summarise, The separation distances to neighbouring properties are such that whilst there would be some marginal impact in terms of outlook when viewed from gardens, it would not result in a material loss of privacy or material harm by reason of the bulk and massing proposed, so in terms of overshadowing. As set out at paragraph 7.7, the standard of accommodation would meet the relevant guidance and is considered to be acceptable. Moving on to transport impacts at paragraph 7.8, the site has a reasonably high PTAL level, public transport accessibility, and the provision of a car-free scheme would be in accordance with London Plan policies, subject to a permit-free legal agreement. And the cycle parking is also in line with policy and can be controlled via condition to ensure a suitable enclosure is provided. The access to the site has been a key consideration in this application, and at paragraph 7.8.8 onwards, officers conclude that access to the site for emergency vehicles and privately operated refuse collection would be adequate, provided that the access track is properly resurfaced first, which is addressed by way of condition. And it is of note that the 2007 extant permission doesn't include a requirement to resurface that access way. It is advised that a private waste management company is secured to service the development, and this is recommended to be controlled by way of legal agreement. And that's due to the difficulties of accessing the site with a full-size refuse collection vehicle that the council would use. So a vehicle that a private waste management company would use would be smaller. In terms of fire safety, the new London plan sets out in the supporting text to policy D12 that fire safety compliance is covered by Part B of the building regulations. However, to ensure that development proposals achieve the highest standards of fire safety, reducing risk to life, minimising the risk of fire spread and providing suitable and convenient means of escape, which all builder users can have confidence in, applicants should consider issues of fire safety before building control application stage, taking into account the diversity and likely behaviour of the population as a whole. So as set out in the report, officers advise that the issue of fire safety is a consideration under the building regulations. However, given the length of the site access, officers have investigated this matter as far as is reasonably possible under a plan and assessment. The proposed development would be subject to building regulations relating to fire safety, and therefore that matter would be considered at that stage. However, you'll note in the report that we have looked at the distances that would be required to reverse, the size of the turning areas. In addition to that, we have a condition relating to fire safety. The agent has confirmed that a fire hydrant would be provided on the site. And we have asked that proper fire safety measures be put in place, whether that be a fire hydrant or some other on-site method, which may include internal sprinklers, or it may not. In terms of security and safety, this was something that the council had raised concern on in the previous application, and in particular a pedestrian access way to the northern part of the site. However, in the previous appeal, the inspector was satisfied that the proposal would not create a living environment that was unsafe or unsecure. In this application, we will also be having a lighting scheme for the access route. The access route would be resurfaced, which is going to make it much more easy to negotiate. So we have sought to safeguard this by condition, but it is important to note that it is not something that the inspector found objectionable. The current proposal is car-free, and therefore the potential conflict of cars meeting other vehicles and pedestrians on the access road is also reduced. So that is an improvement over the previous appeal scheme in regards to security and safety. Other matters raised in the report relating to sustainability, drainage, potential land contamination can be dealt with by way of condition as set out in the report. Members will see in the update or modification sheet that due to a version error in drafting the report, that the scheme is actually for 8 units as opposed to the 9 units stated. So the application has been amended throughout the life of the scheme to reduce it, and that was the height of the buildings and the number of units. So we're now down to 8. Therefore, the recommendation is for approval, subject to a legal agreement to restrict parking permits and to provide a private waste management company and conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Tim. We have 2 speakers on this. an objector first. That's Sabah Khan. If you're there, you have 3 minutes. Sabah Khan, do you know if he's in the meeting?
She is in the meeting, but
She's
she's
in the meeting.
called. She's via the telephone, so I'm just checking whether she can hear us.
Okay.
Just give me a couple of minutes and we give her a
Yeah.
call. Chair.
Yes.
Saba's having issues on Zoom. She's saying she's not muted, but I got her on my phone. So if she speaks, let me know if you can hear her clearly. Will that be okay?
Let's give it a try.
Okay. Saba, do you want to start speaking?
Okay. Okay, so good evening, everyone.
Let me just check if the Saba, just wait, let me just check if the committee can hear you that.
Just about. I
Okay.
think we can manage. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Saba, you can carry on.
Okay, okay. Good evening, everyone. Regarding the land to the back of Woodville Road and Links Avenue, I do not think this is suitable at all for the building of 8 units of accommodation, primarily because of privacy. I reside on Links Avenue, and being overlooked constantly while in my garden, where I've been for 2 years living, and where I've had considerable privacy, I would say, and plus the constant use of the alleyway would be a big invasion of my privacy. It's one of the reasons I did move here, because of the privacy. Another thing is the loss of light, or more aptly, maybe the loss of openness. They're trying to overpopulate a small area, which I do not think is suitable for the building of such properties. I lived in Orion Mews, which is at the end of Woodville Road, for 10 years, so I know firsthand what the buildings went through, the cracks, the structural issues and everything. While it was pleasant to live in, I would not live there again, and I do not advise building any property in such close proximity to railway lines. Again, there's wildlife there, the greenness, the open space, everything is going to be affected by what I would term monstrosities. I know that it's going to be a backland space, but they do not fit in, not at all. Another thing, from experience, I know they have access for like ambulances and police and everything, but these always get blocked. This alleyway always gets blocked. When I lived in Orion News, it always got blocked. And health and safety wise, I don't think it's a good idea. Again, peace and quietness in the gardens will be lost. Privacy, we've had robberies as well, so seeing people that I don't even know going up and down the alleyway, you don't know who is who.
1 minute remaining.
So again, I don't think it's suitable. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Richard Salt of Salt White Architects for the agents. Are you there?
So I'll be reading that on his behalf, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Anna.
Please accept my apologies for not being able to present these comments in person. I'm in an area of low connectivity, so cannot be sure of being able to present to the committee by Zoom. I don't have any comments with regard to the massing, style, density or overlooking, etc., as these have all been discussed in detail during the course of the application and have been addressed by the planning officer in his report. I would, however, like to address the concerns that have been raised with regard to ownership and use of the access way. Fly tipping. Concerns have been raised suggesting that the development will cause fly tipping, etc. This is very unlikely to happen, and indeed the opposite is likely to happen. There have already been many problems with fly tipping, particularly at the southern end of the accessway adjacent to the application site, and the main reason for that is the area is unobserved. It cannot be said that the proposed development, when occupied, would do anything other than help deter fly tippers and improve the situation. Right of way. The application site has a legal right of way along the access road registered on the title deeds, so consent is not required from any of the Links Avenue owners to use the access way. With regard to the maintenance, repair and suitability of the access way, the applicant acknowledges that the adjoining owners are under no obligation to maintain and repair the access to the high standard, although there is an obligation to keep the land in an adequate state of repair insofar as that it does not interfere with the right of way. That obligation extends to keeping the access free of blockages. The applicant, as beneficiary of the right of way, however, does not have the legal right to carry out works, including maintenance and repairs themselves, if not done by the landowner, provided they are done in a reasonable manner and they cover the costs themselves, to ensure their right of way and ultimately to ensure their use of the land is not adversely affected. Similarly, although there are already some main services on the application site, service providers have statutory powers to lay new services across adjacent land if needs be. That said, the applicant has no intention of railroading anyone and will be making a conciliatory approach to the landowners once planning has been granted. Any ownership or right-of-way dispute should not be a reason for preventing the applicant from obtaining planning permission for the land. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, Tim Lidston, was anything specific raised in those two contributions you want to pick up on?
There's nothing specific I'd like to come back on. In terms of privacy, the separation distances to neighbouring windows and gardens is noted in the report. In terms of the visual impact, that will be a matter for members to consider in terms of how they feel it responds to the context of the area. I do appreciate the concerns regarding privacy in that currently you would stand in your garden and have a very open outlook, not the same that you would normally have in what's known as a perimeter block development, which is where most suburban layouts are. So, you'd have this 21 meter window to window distance, which would normally be considered acceptable. The site is currently open to the rear at the moment, so there are no buildings there. So yes, there will be a difference in outlook, but it's not what we could describe as materially harmful in planning terms at that separation distance. Again, we do have conditions relating to the noise impact from the railway line, and that has been looked at by our environmental health officers. Other than that, they are matters for members' judgment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, I'll move now to questions of clarification from members of the committee. Do we have any?
Councillor Southgate, Councillor Henry.
Okay, in that order, Peter first.
Thank you, Chair. So if I can just deal with the modification sheet and the, I'm going to assume that the gross internal areas are compliant with the London plan, because I don't know those off by heart, but in terms of external amenity space, are these houses or flats?
They are flats, except for one at the very end, which has a flat roof, and that is a very small dwelling because it is not subdivided horizontally. But the other ones are ground floor or first floor. So the first floor units would have balconies, and the ground floor units would have a small terrace to the rear.
But allowing five, if I apply the sort of 5 meters plus one per bedroom, some
yes, that's correct.
Don't quite meet that standard, is that right? Or
bear with me.
The smallest is 10.2 square meters.
Okay, well, in which case, no, that would meet it, because your 5 is what you need to provide, and then 1 for each additional occupant. So 5 would be for a 2-bedroom unit, and then additional occupants would need another meter squared.
Okay, thank you. And if I may, Chair, the other points really are about the private waste collection. No, probably better when we come on to comments, actually. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Councillor Henry.
All right, thank you. Okay, Tim, hi, thank you for that. What I want to ask you, the perimeter fence along the railway line, how high is it, please? Just want to know the safety.
Sorry, the fence which is there currently, or the proposed fence that would be there?
Proposed fence, yes.
Well, it would be in the region of 1.8 meters. So a standard boundary fence.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions, I'm going to move it over to comments. Councillor Southgate is in his ward. Believe have said he wants to. Anybody else put on my list?
Councillor Dean, Councillor Allen-Britis, Councillor Draper, and Councillor Crowe.
Okay, so we'll start with Councillor Southgate.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think this site has been under consideration for as long as I've been a councillor. And this looks quite an ingenious solution, really, quite attractive, actually. I think the specific concerns I have are around the waste collection, but also emergency access, not just for the far ends, but also for ambulances. These people will still presumably pay council tax, so that would entitle them to a waste collection service, but they will pay again for a private waste management service. I'm a little bit worried about just how we can check the effectiveness of that. And in terms of as I gathered from the agent's statement, which sounded somewhat litigious, but the access will be surfaced. I'm not quite sure where responsibility for the ongoing maintenance of that lies. That would be a concern. But in terms of the actual design, I think it works pretty well. Also, we seem to be looking at a lot of applications for schemes besides railway lines, don't we? But this one, at least, I think there are 2 trains an hour in each direction. It's not like the one in Rains Park the other day, the other month. So it's just concern about the emergency access, particularly a slight sense of kicking the can down the road with passing the responsibility for fire regulation to building control. I'd be happier if I felt we had clear guarantees on that. But if these things can be managed by effective condition, then I would support it, support the application.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dean.
Oh, you're on mute, Councillor Dean.
Very sorry, and thank you very much for that. I think this is one of those applications in the past that came to committee that we were right to reject rather than not look at the papers and just push it through. Because the last time it came to committee, which was 1 or 2 years ago, it was a disaster. It was ugly. It failed on many of the guidelines, and it was totally unreasonable for the people living there and for the people who live close to it. They appealed, and clearly, very clearly, this is a far superior presentation and application, yet it's almost the same. And this is why we just have to make sure. Too many times I hear that we've got to push housing through. This is the reason we reject things. It's because you get back beautiful things. I understand fully why the locals complain about this. I don't think there's any reason to complain, except for I fully back Councillor Southgate. The council do charge these people council tax. I'm absolutely sure they won't be saying we'll let you off, and they have to have municipal waste collection, and I'm imagining lighting as well, but I'm not so sure about that. So I certainly back this application, but I think there has to be a condition that they have municipal collections.
Chair, can I just clarify that the 2017 application was in fact a decision by the officers to refuse permission?
Well done, officers.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think I might go back to either, Tim, probably on the issue of the waste collection, because my understanding from Tim's initial report was that it needed to be a private contract because the large bin lorries that we use or Veolia use on our behalf can't fit down that access road. Is that right?
That's largely the size of it. They could fit down the access road were they to reverse, as could a fire engine, but there are, being at 4.3 meters wide, the access road, where the minimum width is somewhat smaller than that to provide for access. However, there are guidelines about how far a vehicle should be expected to reverse along the access route, and that is 20 meters. And that's guidance from the London Fire Brigade. In terms of a council refuse vehicle, we have had indicated from the council's waste services section that the site wouldn't be suitable to be serviced by a larger council vehicle, and that's due to the narrowness of the access. We had tried to avoid a private waste management company. However, the only solution wouldn't be very feasible because it would involve having to have a satellite bin store near the road front, which would make issues of untidiness and responsibility of bringing bins back to the site potentially more disruptive than if it were a private waste management company, which is then controlled by legal agreement. So that was the thinking. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. Councillor Alambretis.
Thank you. Just a bit surprised. Well, I'm surprised that Peter Southgate seems to be about to say yes. I don't know. It's entirely up to him. But well done, Peter. I know it's in your ward, but I don't know why you're surprised that we seem to be doing railway lines. This is an infill borough. This is Wimbledon and Merton. It is small stretches of land. It's an infill borough. That's what happens in this borough. So please don't be surprised that people are doing railway lines, sheds, garages. That's the name of the game here. in Merton. So we need to welcome them, and we need to fill in the gaps. For me, if there is to be one condition or something noted or respected, I'm quite happy with the application. It's Wimbledon Swift Group and the need for Swift bricks. They've made comments in the application in external walls, in shaded areas. I think that would be a nice touch. I can just see that going down well in that area. All for it, and see if we can encourage those Swift bricks and bring on more properties via railway lines in tight areas.
Thank you for that. Councillor Draper.
Yeah, very, very quickly indeed, Chair. Just to say that this sort of thing, this sort of application, makes being on this committee a bit of a joy, because it's a really pretty and sensible thing. I can see it's got difficulties. I can see it's got complications. We've got to learn to live with those complications, colleagues. So we want this sort of thing. You know, compared to the last railway line one we had, this is beautiful, and it's. Well, I think you can guess which way I'm going to vote on it.
Thank you, Councillor Draper. Councillor Crowe, Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. I think this whole business about the waste collection is a kind of warning shot. It seems to me that our council vehicles are 2.5 metres wide, so they can easily go down an access road, which is 4.3 metres wide. The problem is the length of the reverse. Now, if there was an adequate turning circle at the end, reversing wouldn't come into it. But there isn't an adequate turning circle at the end, because I think the developer's been a bit greedy. So I think really what we should be asking for is for one less unit, so that there can be an adequate turning circle at the end, so that the council can provide the refuse collection, which I think is the normal and proper way of doing waste management in the London Borough. So I'm against this, because I think it's just wrong, and the waste collection issue is the warning sign that we should all heed.
Okay, thank you for that. Has anybody else indicated that they want to speak on this?
Councillor Hendry and Councillor Dean.
Henry and Dean was there again. He's already spoken once. But yeah, Councillor Henry first.
Right, thank you, Chair. Okay, as Councillor Crowe said, my concern is the waste management. As we all know, that's one of the biggest problems we have right now in Merton. And you know, I think that's something we need to put, that they address that issue. Away from that, I think that's a beautiful building. I do like it, but the waste is a very important issue that we need to have addressed before anything go along.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dean again.
Yeah, so it's just based on the waste, just some experience. About 2 or 3 years ago, we said yes to building on Southey Bowling Green, and the waste was going to be collected inside the bowling green. But clearly, once it was built, it was clear that the waste lorries couldn't get in there. So they have to bring all their stuff out. So it's probably about 20 metres for them. And I think we're going to have to make that proposal here too, that they need to bring their waste out to the main public realm. Otherwise, I don't think we're going to get to the answer. I agree with Peter Southgate. There has to be a waste collection, but it has to be right for the council.
Councillor Southgate.
Southgate, yes.
Thank you. Interesting piece in the, I think it was the FT at the weekend, about how we design our cities and how we look to the future. And a point made that we seem to be designing them around the turning dimensions of our waste collection vehicles rather than the people who might want to live there, and the spaces we create, and making it a sort of beautiful and habitable spaces. Actually, on balance, I think a smaller vehicle, and if that means a private contractor, then so be it, is probably better than people touting out big Euro bins to the onto Woodville Road to annoy their neighbours in Woodville Road until they're wheeled back again. So there's not an ideal solution, but I think this is probably as good as we're going to get on the waste front.
Okay, on that sentiment, going to put it to the vote. The recommendation is to grant permission, subject to conditions in section 106. All those in favour?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 in favour.
7. Those against?
1 against.
And those not voting? Myself?
Farzana, can I just check whether or not members wish Councillor Alan Brittis's observations about the SWIFT boxes to be included as an additional condition?
I think maybe we can ask officers to explore with the developers. I don't think we want to add a condition that should be impossible, although I very much doubt in this case it is. But they should. It should certainly be brought to their attention, and they should be encouraged.
Okay.
Don't think about necessarily attaching a condition.
Okay.
Okay. So back to the voting, we had 7 for, 1 against. Myself not voting. We're missing a vote, but I'm not.
Yeah, maybe Councillor Henry's hand was not too distinct. Does that?
Was that for Councillor Hendry? Yeah. So that's 8-1-1.
8 for, 1 against, and myself not voting. Agenda item 12 is passed. So now we go back to the start of the agenda of the items that did not have anyone down to speak. So we're going back to item number 6. 18 Clifton Road in Village Ward, and the officer on this one, Tim Bryson again.
Thank you, Chair. Just share my screen. Hopefully you can see the screen plans. So the application site is in Clifton Road. It is currently a large building built circa 1880, of traditional in character, which is currently 4 flats. It has a large rear garden with access from Clifton Road and some old garages in this part of the site here. The surroundings are largely residential, also purpose-built flats opposite and adjacent. Existing site plan. The proposal itself is to convert the existing building from flats back to its original form as one single dwelling house. In doing that, some other parts of the other alterations are proposed to the building and the access. The scheme you'll see within the report, it originally was submitted, which included the erection of 2 houses in the garden at the rear, subdividing the plot. Those have been withdrawn from this current application following advice from officers. The access, new access will be created to create an in and out access route through. Alterations to the building. So here we go through the existing plans. There's a lower ground floor flat, ground, first and top floor. Alterations to the building as follows. So at the front, those windows would be removed and new entrance put in, and the entrance door removed with a new window put in. So I can come on to those elevations here. As you can see from the building, a grand building of its time. Proposed floor plans. The light well at the front will be slightly enlarged to create more light to the lower ground floor windows, with a new bridge created over to the new front entrance, with accommodation across all floors. So looking through, so the actual ground, if you imagine the ground level here, so you wouldn't actually see those windows in front of you, this bridge would go over, and a new stone porch to be provided over a new entrance to the building. And on the side where the existing entrances would be blocked up with a new window. So those are the alterations. Turning to trees, so you'll see within the report some trees to be removed at the front. This is the view of the front of the site, and as you can see, it is largely overgrown and unkept. The tree officers looked at the trees to be removed, finds it acceptable. Four trees would be retained at the front. Officers consider a good balance is drawn between opening up the site to welcome the building back into the street scene is beneficial for this particular building. And as the tree report had not been updated following removal of the two houses at the back proposed, it's recommended an updated tree report be done. But that does subsequently result in less trees being removed as more trees were to be removed at the rear of the site with the two new houses proposed in the garden, but that's no longer proposed. Looking at the rear of the building, this would be removed. So would the unsightly garages here would be removed, and the garden would remain largely as is. So overall, Chair, officers recommend permission be granted, subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. There being no speakers on this one, we'll go straight to questions from members of the committee. Do we have any?
No, Chair.
No. Does anyone want to speak on this one?
Councillor Southgate.
Councillor Southgate, Peter.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Two sort of interesting issues of principle, aren't there? One is the loss of three dwellings as the 4 flats are converted back to a single family home at a time when our target for the number of new homes per year is dramatically increased to 918 from 411. The second is failure to maximise or optimise the use of a handy infill site in the rear garden. I can see the Wimbledon Society are probably very happy about that, but it is ironic, isn't it? And we're told the name of the game is infill, that those 2 houses have now been withdrawn. An observation, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Councillor Alambridis.
Alambridis, yes.
You're on mute, Stephen. I like it that way.
You're mute.
It's a grand house that we should approve. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? In which case, I'm going to take it to the vote. All those in favour of the recommendation, which is grant planning permission. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 for. 9 and mine, not 1 non-vote makes it 9-1. That one is passed. Thank you very much. Agenda item number 7. Well, I think that's Tim Bryson's responsibilities for the evening finished. So thank you very much for joining us. Yeah, I think you can get off a bit early now. And we move to the nursery school at 1 Cricket Green, and that's Jonathan Lewis to present.
What am I still?
Your microphone's still on, Councillor Alambridis. Thank you. Is John Lewis with us? Jonathan Lewis with us?
Oh, sorry. I'm terribly sorry, Councillor Ward. Tim and I were just discussing Woodville Road. So sorry about that.
That's all right.
Right.
So it's the nursery at 1 Cricket Green.
Okay. Just a second. Right. Okay. And can you confirm that you can see the image on the screen, the site location?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So we have a fairly modest proposal to make some changes to an existing nursery on Cricket Green. Why is the case on the Planning Applications Committee? Well, because it's a departure from the development plan. It's on a lesser scale than another scheme coming before members this evening, which relates to the lodge at Mordenhall Park. But the proposal falls within the scope of a departure under section 72 of the Act, and the council's guided by the 2015 procedure order in terms of how we process schemes like this. So whilst we still have to be mindful of the primacy of the development plan in making decisions, if members consider that there are material considerations which would warrant taking a different approach on an application like this, then it can be approved. It's not something which is unlawful for members to do. You can depart from the provisions of the development plan. So the proposal that we've got, if I can just go down to the images here, it's a domestic building, or a former domestic building at the Cold Blows end of Cricket Green. You can see the building in the image here. It was granted permission a number of years ago to be used primarily as a nursery. And originally there was a condition which restricted the use of a small non-self-contained flat within the building to be used by the operators of the nursery. That was then changed to it simply being for staff operating or working at the nursery. As I've said, you can see from the images that it's a non-self-contained flat. So you come in through the landing, shared stairwell, there's one living room, little bathroom, and a small kitchen. The floor space at the moment is around 34 square meters, so around 12% smaller than the national standard for a one-person unit. And then if we actually consider other aspects of the proposal, you'll see from the officer's report that we've taken soundings from the Children's School and Families department, and they've identified that there is a need for preschool places in the Mitcham area. So given the recognised need and the poor quality of accommodation, it's considered that there may be reasonable grounds on which to depart from the provisions of the development plan, which are on the side of retaining residential accommodation. As I've said, the use is long established. It would provide, it currently provides for around 30 children. This would provide for a maximum of a further 12 children. So we need to consider impact on the neighbours. We have a footpath to the north, that's Cold Blows, part of the open, part of the open space. So if you can see the hand moving, so we have the footpath link along this side. In here, we have a parking area associated with the former Birches site. So again, it's a matter of judgment as to whether or not 12 small children on top of the 30 which can go there would be so harmful as to warrant refusal. Like I said, that's very much a matter of judgment. I really think it would be very difficult to quantify the noise impact of the additional children. The other key impact to consider is the traffic impact. You'll see from the report that very minimal traffic or additional traffic movements are likely to be associated with the planning application. But I think it's important to be aware that the planning officers are approaching this with two devices by which we can mitigate for any change in impact on traffic. One is that a condition is recommended to ensure that the enlarged use would function with a proper travel plan in place, which we believe isn't the case at the moment. And then the other thing, which may in the longer term have an impact on mitigating against traffic impact along the length of Cricket Green. You may be aware that the council has taken initiatives during the COVID pandemic to increase its school streets programme. There was a report drafted on this last year. The Cabinet Member for Regeneration, Housing and Transport endorsed experimental traffic management schemes in August 2020, which includes Cricket Green, which is the sort of the orangey strip here. The temporary measures came into effect on the 8th of October last year, and the consultation period will run for a period of 12 months. And you can see from the little images on the screen that this will restrict certain vehicles from entering the street during certain times of the day associated with peak traffic movements, because at the moment we've got the Date Valley School, which is a far larger school facility at the very north end of Cricket Green. So very much belt and braces here. Travel plan to mitigate against traffic impact and to encourage more sustainable modes of transport. And there is the potential in the longer term, subject to the council's consultation exercises on the school streets rollout, that in fact the whole issue of traffic and parking may begin to sort of melt away if this initiative was to be made permanent. And the scheme is recommended for approval, subject to a number of conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. There being no speakers on this item, we move straight to questions from members of the committee. Do we have any?
No, Chair.
No. Anyone wishing to contribute, comment?
Councillor Draper.
Councillor Draper.
Councillor Alabritis.
Just a brief comment, Chair. I mean, I think, you know, from the point of view of getting rid of a not particularly good flat in order to provide extra space for a nursery, which is the primary purpose of the building, is a good idea. But I think there's one premise which is a bit worrying, in that we're told elsewhere that nurseries in Mitcham are having a certain amount of difficulty in actually filling their places, which kind of goes against what the evidence has suggested from children's schools and families. So I'm very happy for it to happen, but I'm not so sure whether that should be the reason.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lambritis.
I think this should go ahead. I think we should all vote for nursery places. I think it is important that we give choice and we give that ability to Mitcham parents, and our good officer Jonathan Lewis has made the point about departing, but that we can depart, and where there is a possibility that we can depart and go in a brave new world, we should take it here on this Planning Applications Committee. So let's depart from the normal norm. Let's reward parents with extra places at this nursery, and let's vote for this.
Councillor Henry.
Councillor Henry.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a very wise idea, and you know, safe place. It's in a safe area, and it can be made much safer. And I do welcome this idea, and I am going forward to support approving this application.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll move to the vote. The recommendation is grant permission subject to conditions. Can I see all those in favour?
9 in favour.
My one non-vote. It means that one is passed. Thank you. The final item on our agenda this evening, item number 10, Gatehouse Lodge in Mordenhall Park, and that is Jonathan Lewis again.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I'm just okay. Chair, members, if I can firstly draw members' attention to the modifications sheet, you'll see what appears to be quite a lengthy list of changes to conditions, but having looked at them carefully, it's really what I would describe as fine-tuning. There's some adjustments to conditions relating to the schedule of works, some fine-tuning on materials. There's some amendments to the delivery and servicing plan condition and landscaping and biodiversity. So although there's some text here, it's not significant or requires sort of a lot of further consideration, I would suggest. Again, similar to the Cricket Green application, why planning committee? It's a departure, so officers don't have the delegated authority to process these schemes. Section 70 brackets 2 of the Act, decisions must be taken in accordance with the development plan unless there are material considerations that indicate otherwise. The power for the council to depart from the development plan is confirmed by Article 32 of the Town and Country Planning Development Management Procedure Order 2015. I can confirm that the correct publicity has been followed again in this particular instance. I would like to say in this instance, because we are looking at a much bigger plot with a much bigger building on the site, that it's important to consider whether a departure from the development plan has the potential to undermine the council's application of its housing safeguarding policy. And that really goes to the heart of the approach that's been taken again in this instance. There are two interlinked applications. If I can just take you to some of the better images of the site, we've got. So we've got a rather fine listed building on the site, a very large property that's been tenanted as a single dwelling for around 30 years. You'll see from the report that the National Trust have marketed the building. They haven't been able to find a new tenant which meets the business requirements of the Trust, and have therefore looked at alternative uses for the building. In essence, officers consider that an institutional use, such as a school, has the potential to inject the necessary funding to restore the fabric and maintain the fabric of the historic building in the longer term. If I can just take members to some of the images of the building on the site. Sorry, the planning officer has put together quite an extensive set of documents here. So you might be familiar with the site. Access there is an access from the roundabout just south of Morden Town Centre, next to the Gatehouse Lodge. You can see here, but this wouldn't be used. This would simply be an emergency access in the case of a fire tender needing to access the site. The principal access would be from these gates, which lead to what's often described as an overspill car park for the garden centre site, and which I believe may have been used for overspill parking on the Country Comes to Town spring events, which the Trust runs. This is the building which it is proposed to convert into a school. Like I said, a rather fine historic building, but again, this is where the balance has to be struck. Is it realistic to look at trying to find new tenants for this building if, having conducted the marketing exercise, no person or no occupiers have come forward which can realistically pay the rent which the Trust feels the property might otherwise secure. So we are looking at trying to find an institutional use of this building. You'll see in the officer's report at section 3 quite a detailed description of the various works which are being proposed, including there's a lot of work inside the building that needs to be done to refurbish it. These are parts of the building that can be brought back into use for various purposes associated with the school. Again, opportunities for there to be limited intervention to the heritage asset, because unlike perhaps where you have an instance where somebody might say, well, surely this can be converted into flats. That's exactly what we wouldn't want to do with a heritage asset. We want to try and keep the fabric intact. And that's why we're really sort of painted into the corner with, is this suitable now for trying to just have one family living there? There are other buildings within the grounds, such as these stables. They'll be refurbished as part of the proposals and used for school uses. This is the upper floor, I believe, of the stable building, which again can be used as a studio for art and other purposes for the children. There are a number of little buildings within the grounds of the house. The proposals would be to refurbish and renovate these buildings with very sort of minimal intervention. Really, I think this gets onto the point that it's metropolitan open land, so you wouldn't want a lot of new building to be taking place. But these proposals are really to restore and refurbish the existing buildings. Again, the potting shed here, which I believe they want to use as an art studio. And again, we have some works that are going to take place whereby I think the ice house will be made secure so that children can't get in. And again, the well will be made secure as well. If I can just go back to the various plans for the site. You'll have all the drawings on the agenda papers this evening. If I can just get to the, that's probably as good a plan as any to look at. So we've looked at heritage issues. So there's the opportunity to refurbish the listed house, to refurbish some of the outbuildings that we've got here. In terms of neighbour amenity, well, again, the only other building that might be affected in terms of movements would be the little Gatehouse Lodge just below the edge of the screen here. But as I've said, it would just be an emergency access at that point. Most of the traffic would come in, or sorry, anyone visiting the school would be coming in through the green gates here. In terms of refuse arrangements, that's something which is considered satisfactory by our refuse management team. Sustainability, the applicants have adopted quite a creative approach here by placing solar panels on the roofs of some of the little outbuildings, rather than going for inappropriate wholesale damage to the building, because obviously it's a grade 2 listed building and you wouldn't want double glazing put in there. In terms of safety, the Metropolitan Police haven't raised issues. They've provided a fire safety report on the proposals. Biodiversity, there are some trees which would be, a small number of trees that would be lost, but these are poor quality trees, and our arboricultural officer has not raised any issues there. As I've said, the interventions in terms of some little new structures on sites such as along here and over here are very modest and wouldn't detract from, again, another key driving force, the metropolitan open land status of the site, so it wouldn't impact on the open character. The proposals would enhance the social infrastructure of this part of the borough, and in essence, what we're looking at is a package of proposals that safeguard and enhance the heritage asset, and as such warrant a departure from the development plan such that it wouldn't undermine the successful application of our housing safeguarding policy on other more conventional sites. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. There being no objectors or applicants to speak on this, we'll go straight to questions from members of the committee.
Councillor Southgate, Councillor Allenbritis.
Southgate and Allenbritis, okay.
Thank you, Chair. In the sort of rationale from the National Trust, one of the benefits it claims is allow greater public access, but there wouldn't be any greater public access, would there?
Chair, for something like this, where you have an institutional use, there are opportunities outside of normal term time for the owners of the listed building to make that building accessible to the public on certain times of the year. And again, Merton has not had a lot of buildings which have been accessible during the Open House London weekend in September each year. And having something like an institutional use like this might provide an opportunity for subsequent Open House London events for the building to be accessible in a way that perhaps if it was someone's private residence, that wouldn't be the case.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Allenbritis.
I don't know if Jonathan Lewis is aware, and also for the information of Councillor Peter Southgate, this school use will be Mondays to Thursdays, is that right? Which would mean open use possible Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Well, Chair and Councillor Allenbritis, school uses do provide that medium by which greater access can be conferred on the wider community, subject to an access arrangements being agreed with the school. I have not. I'm not so au fait with every last condition as to whether or not we've asked for a plan to enable wider public access. But if this was something which members felt helped justify the departure from the development plan, that's something that officers could look at in the way in which we've sometimes done with other school applications.
Okay, I think that's something maybe. Alan Brutus.
Yeah, comments now?
Well, just before I come to comments, yeah, the question be, I'm not sure it's something we should be adding as a condition, but certainly it seems the applicants have already expressed willingness, and to remind them of that and encourage it rather than attaching another specific condition, I think. Okay, now move to comments. Councillor Alan Brutus.
Yes, thank you. This is in my ward, the ward of Ravensbury, which I have represented since 2003. Many a treasured building has been saved by educational use, and we should approve this. We should embrace it. Again, it is another departure. I know we lack travel abroad, but we seem to be in 2 departure lounges at this meeting. Yeah, I do think it'll be a boost to the area, a boost to those buildings in terms of safeguarding of buildings that would otherwise go to rack and ruin. I think we should approve. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
Councillor Southgate, Councillor Henry.
Okay, thank you.
Well, what's the TV program called? Location, location, location. You know, handsome Georgian house extending to more than 400 square meters, set in 3 acres of private grounds. Yours for, what was it, 4,500 a month? Councillor Alan Brutus, I'm surprised they're not tempted. But in fact, yes, with the opportunity for the school to restore it, and indeed to make good use of not only the buildings but the outbuildings and the grounds, it's actually quite a attractive prospect. I don't know about whether it's called the wood folk or what their ethos is. My only slight concern, drawing from a catchment area that includes Chiswick and Barnes, that's a lot of car journeys, I suspect, and feeding in and out of the very, very busy Mordenhall Road there, through that entrance to the National Trust car park, which I'm sure we all know. It will need a fairly stringent application of a travel plan to ensure that can be done safely. But I think it's actually quite an attractive prospect. And the important point is that we do bring these historic buildings back into effective use rather than let them decay.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Henry.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say I am really happy and proud that we've taken responsibility of beautiful buildings like that and possibly more. And it will be a great asset, not only to the council and the borough, but to our children. I just want to say, whoever found that building, well done.
Okay, thank you for that. If there are no further comments, I'm going to take this one to the vote. The officer's recommendation is approval. Second, it's on the second page. 2 different, both grant permission and grant the listed building consent is the second one. I've taken them both together. All those in favour of those 2 recommendations?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
9 and my 1 no vote. That is again virtually.
No, Councillor, sorry, it's 8-4, and Councillor Dean's not voted yet.
All those against? Those not voting?
2 not voting.
2 not voting. Okay. That's virtually the end. We have item number 13, which is a report to note. Unless anyone wants to raise anything specifically, we'll just note that.
Are there no appeals this month? Are there no appeals, Chair?
Maybe you should move to.
No, there was no appeals.
316, where it says appeals. No. Okay, that's the end of the meeting. Thank you very much for your attendance, and we'll see you next month.